Chapter 102. Buying a carriage. Gu Yundong first brought Feng Danning for lunch. It was the best restaurant in the county, Xian'er restaurant. Feng Danning only knew that the food in this restaurant was good, but he had never been willing to come in to eat. He did not expect to take advantage of Yundong and taste the food at Xian'er restaurant. It was delicious, but it was too expensive and the portion was small. Just a palm-sized dish cost 30 copper coins. Feng Danning felt sorry for Gu Yundong's money. However, this girl was very generous. After eating, she asked Feng Danning to bring her to the market. She wanted to buy a carriage. You want to buy a carriage? Feng Danning was surprised. This Gu girl who had escaped from the wilderness was indeed more capable than he had imagined. He thought that it would be good enough if she could take out 100 taels of silver to build a house. He did not expect that she still had the money to buy a carriage. Gu Yundong nodded. It's convenient to buy a carriage. If we hadn't taken someone else's mule cart into the city today, we wouldn't know how much time we would have wasted. Moreover, my sister-in-law is still young. With a carriage, we can bring them to the city to play. Gu Yunshu and Gu Yunke rarely had the chance to go out and play. In the past, when they were in the Gu family, Gu Yunshu was probably the only one who had gone to town. Later, they were on the way to escape. This time, they went far, but they did not have the leisure to stop and take a good look. Now that she had settled down, she had money on hand and could send Yunshu to school. In the future, she would bring them out to play whenever there was a festival. If you want to buy horses, you have to go to the market on East Street, which specializes in selling livestock. It's just that it's already past noon. We don't know if there are any good horses. Gu Yundong nodded. Then let's go to the market in East Street to take a look. If we can't find anything good today, we'll come back another day. Feng Danning laughed and led her to East Street. After noon, the market was not as lively. Feng Danning knew someone here. He was a smart kid who looked after the place. He directly brought them to the innermost part of the market. Uncle Feng, you're lucky today. Just now, the broker from the Wan family brokerage brought 3 or 4 horses over. I've seen them. They're better than the ones sold this morning. Feng Danning perked up. Really? Hurry up and bring us to take a look. The horses were indeed good horses, but they were also not cheap. Gu Yundong was not very good at checking horses, but Feng Danning had some experience. In addition, the kid beside him helped to bargain. In the end, he bought a strong brown-haired horse for 15 taels of silver. This horse was quite friendly to Gu Yundong, and she liked it. It was not old, so she decided that it was it. When a broker asked her if she wanted a carriage, she definitely did. However, there was no need for it to be too gorgeous. After all, she often went back and forth in the village. It was all dirt. In the end, Gu Yundong chose an ordinary-looking but sturdy carriage. She put on the horse rope and could leave. This carriage also cost 3 taels. TSK, it was expensive, but now that she had a carriage and a house, Gu Yundong was very satisfied. After the carriage was bought, Gu Yundong wanted to go to South Street to buy something. It was prosperous there and was close to the city gate. Feng Danning was a little excited as he drove the carriage. Men loved vehicles, regardless of modern times or ancient times, even if this vehicle was not his. The two of them took the carriage to the East Street. Unexpectedly, when the carriage passed by the back road of the Peng residence, the door of the Peng residence opened and a person was thrown out heavily. If not for Feng Danning's sharp eyes and quick hands, the horse would have been shocked. Chapter 103. Who cares? Gu Yundong quickly held the carriage door and sat down. He looked up at the person who had been thrown out. That person was in a sorry state. The lower half of his body looked bloody, and his face was swollen. Why does he look so familiar? Where have I seen him before? She didn't know him, but Feng Danning did. He was shocked. Isn't this Hu Liang? Why is he here and beaten up like this by the Peng family? Yundong, should we? Feng Danning wanted to ask if he could help. Although this rascal was quite hateful, they were from the same village after all. It was a little unreasonable for him to stand by and do nothing when he saw him like this. Unexpectedly, before he could finish speaking, Hu Liang, who was beaten half to death, started crying at the Peng residence. I'm not lying. I'm really here to look for young Master Peng. That Gu Yundong wants to harm young Master Peng. She went around our village saying that young Master Peng stole her things, and even said that she has a backer to torture young Master Peng to death. Liang did not know how things had turned out like this. He had been in the Peng residence since the moment he woke up. He was about to look for young Master Peng when he was caught. They said that he was a thief who had broken into the residence. He must have been involved in young Master's accident. Then, he was beaten up without a word and thrown out. Yundong sneered. Facing Feng Daning's similarly gloomy expression, she said, "Who cares if he dies?" It didn't look like he had been hit very seriously. He still had so much strength to frame her. Feng Daning did not look at Liang again and drove the carriage past him. Liang still wanted to work hard, but he did not expect another person to come out of the Peng residence. It was Peng Zhongfei's servant. This servant had been taking care of Peng Zhongfei, who had been beaten up previously. Later on, he heard the subordinates talking about Liang. When he reported it to the young master was actually very angry. He said that the Gu family was under his protection now. Whoever dared to destroy the Gu family's house would be going against the Peng family. He asked the servant to come out and give Liang a warning. The servant did not look at Liang. He only said a few words to the thugs beside him before entering again. As soon as he left, the thugs began to approach Liang step by step. Yundong and his wife did not know what happened after that. As soon as she arrived at South Street, she started shopping crazily. With money in her hands, she did not panic. In addition, she was living in the Zhang family now, so she did not need to be wary of anyone. She bought a few bolts of cloth from a shop and then went to the provision store to buy daily necessities. However, the provision store in the county city was really too small compared to the prefectural city. When she saw the jewelry shop, she went in and bought 2 small gold locks for Gu Yunshu and Gu Yunke. She remembered that the youngest son of his second branch had a small golden lock. Gu Yunshu was very envious when he saw it. Now that she saw it, she would definitely be happy. There was also a silver hairpin for her mother. She was good looking. After cleaning up, she would be a beauty. With some jewelry, she was simply too pleasing to the eye. In the end, she bought herself a pair of earrings. Yes, if she was rich, she had to show off. After buying the jewelry, she went to buy a lot of food. Thinking of Shao Qingyuan, she paused and went to the blacksmith shop to get a barbecue rack. She could come over and get it in 5 to 6 days. When the time came, she would make him a barbecue. After buying everything, it was almost evening. Satisfied, Gu Yundong returned to the village in the carriage. Even though it was getting late, the carriage still attracted everyone's attention as soon as it entered the village. Chapter 104:1 Bought it. The driver was Feng Daning. Many people in the village knew that Feng Daning had followed Gu Yundong to the Peng residence this morning. It was all thanks to Jin Yuexiang's publicity. Therefore, when they saw him, everyone could not help but surround him. They even asked him where this carriage came from. Was it from the Peng residence? Before Feng Daning could answer, he was interrupted by Jin Yuexiang, who had rushed over to watch the show. What do you mean the Peng family gave it to him? What are you all thinking? Gu Yundong went to cause trouble for young Master Peng, but the Peng family still gave him a carriage? As he spoke, he even laughed loudly and said maliciously, "I think she was beaten to death by the Peng family. Feng Daning hired a carriage to pull her back, right?" Everyone took 2 steps back with a whoosh. They widened their eyes and looked at the carriage in fear, as if bright red blood would flow out at any time. Feng Daning felt helpless. Jin Yuexiang was full of nonsense. No matter how domineering the Peng family was, they would not dare to kill someone so blatantly and ask him to pull the corpse back. However, everyone in the village believed it. Even Chun Liang, who had rushed over later, widened his eyes in disbelief. He said bitterly, Did something really happen? Sai Dan, why didn't you stop them?" Before he could finish speaking, Gu Yundong slowly lifted the curtain and smiled at everyone. This carriage was indeed not given by the Peng family. I bought it myself. Whoa. Everyone took a small step back in unison. The smug smile on Jin Yuexiang's face instantly froze. She widened her eyes and looked at Gu Yundong. "You're fine. What are you talking about? What can happen to me?" Didn't you go and find trouble with the Peng family? Gu Yundong looked innocent. Who did you hear that from? Jin Yuexiang shouted. I heard it with my own ears. It was clearly Feng Daneng who said that the blueprint had been taken away by young Master Peng. He didn't even allow you to build a house. You went to the Peng family to ask for an explanation. Oh, so she was eavesdropping. Gu Yundong raised his eyebrows. Oh, young Master Peng only said that my drawing is very good and wanted to borrow it to take a look. I happen to be going to County City to buy something today, so I took the drawing back. Why is it that when it comes to you, it becomes me going to the Peng residence to demand an explanation? Do you dare to say this in front of young Master Peng? Feng Danning said righteously. That's right. Yundong wanted to buy a carriage. One happened to be more familiar with it, so she asked me to help her pick one. She could also go to the Peng residence to get the blueprints. Jin Yuexiang, how can you distort the truth and spread rumors everywhere, making everyone panic? Jin Yuexiang was dumbfounded. Did she hear wrongly? No. The others suddenly understood. So that was the case. If it was really as Jin Yuexiang had said, would Feng Daneng and Gu Yundong be able to return safely? Indeed, they cannot trust Big Mouth's words too much. Chun Liang heaved a sigh of relief and turned his attention to the carriage. Did you buy this? Gu Yundong got out of the carriage. I thought that would be more convenient with a carriage. We won't have to rely on our legs to go to the county next time. Chun Liang nodded. The Gu family was indeed wealthy. The Gu girl. At this moment, someone suddenly called out to her from the side and said enviously, Your carriage looks very good. This horse looks strong. The carriage is also sturdy and big. In the future, when we go to the county city, it will be convenient, right? Chapter 105. Hong Gu Yundong looked at the man. He was a middle-aged man. She did not know him, but she did not like to hear him say such things in front of everyone. Hence, she smiled at that person and said, It's my family's convenience. It has nothing to do with you. That person was stunned. This little girl really didn't know how to conduct herself. He raised his eyebrows. Why? We're from the same village. If we need help, you're not even willing to lend your carriage? Yes, as long as you pay 20 copper coins per trip to the county. The price was clearly stated, lest everyone wanted to curry favor and take advantage of her. Does she look like someone who is easy to talk to? You're too black-hearted. We're all from the same village, and you're actually charging money? That person immediately shouted, Isn't that right, everyone? We'll only pay 3 copper coins each if we take the ox cart to the county. Gu Yundong said, Oh, so you know that you have to pay for taking someone else's carriage. I thought you didn't know that even biological brothers have to settle accounts clearly. If you think it's too expensive, you can choose not to take it. I bought the carriage for myself, not for you. That person choked. Chun Liang, who was at the side, could not stand it anymore. All right. One look, and you can tell that this carriage is not cheap. There are so many people in the entire village. If everybody takes it, can you let her have some peace? The carriage is not for public use. One think the method of charging money is quite good. If you can afford it, you can take it. If you can't, you could take the ox cart. It's been like this for so many years. Why? Does the Gu family buy a carriage and your legs are broken? Gu Yundong silently gave him a thumbs up. If she said it, it was like she was looking down on them. The village chief was the right person to say it. As expected, the people around who wanted to take advantage of him were a little flustered, especially the middle-aged man who had just spoken. He could only lower his head and mutter. At this moment, Gu Yinshu ran over with the Zhou siblings. Eldest sister, you're finally back. Gu Yundong looked down at his flushed face and reached out to rub his head. Were you obedient at home? Yes, I was. As he spoke, he shifted his gaze to the carriage behind her. Big sister, did you rent a carriage to come back? Gu Yundong carried him to the shaft of the carriage. No, this is our family's carriage. Eldest sister bought it today. If you want to go anywhere in the future, you can take this carriage. Gu Yunshu's eyes lit up and his face turned red. His entire body was trembling. Really? Our carriage? Yes. Eldest sister will bring you home. Sit properly. Gu Yundong wanted the Zhou siblings to go up too, but the two of them had already run forward. Gu Yundong had no choice but to greet the village chief. It's getting late. My mother is still waiting for me at home, so 111 go home first. Go back, go back. It's been a long day. Qingyuan waved his hand and smiled. No matter what, their village finally had its first carriage. As the village chief, he was also proud. Feng Daneng led the carriage inside. There were still many villagers following behind. Although they couldn't take it, they could watch. It was good to feast their eyes. Yundong did not care. When she arrived at the Zhou residence, she carried Yunshu down. The little fellow immediately ran in front of the horse. Feng Daneng stopped him from approaching in case the horse was shocked. Yundong reminded him before entering the house. Unexpectedly, as soon as she entered, she stumbled towards Yunke. The little girl's eyes were red, as if she had just cried. Chapter 106. Yunke complains Yundong was stunned. Why are you crying? Who bullied you? It's older brother. The little girl began to complain. Older brother was bad. One also wanted to pick up eldest sister. He didn't even wait for me and ran away. I'm so angry. Yunke was young and malnourished. She would stagger if she walked faster, let alone run. Yunshu did not notice and ran to the village entrance to pick up eldest sister. The little girl was so angry that she stomped her feet twice. 111 ignore brother from now on. Just as she finished speaking, Yunshu ran in excitedly and said to her, Little sister, eldest sister bought a carriage. It's outside the door. Hurry up and take a look. The little girl's eyes immediately lit up. I want to see, one want to see. Then, she naturally held Yunshu's hand, and the two of them happily walked out of the courtyard. Yundong, as long as the two of you are happy. She shook her head and stood up to look at Madame Yang and Madame Dong. Madame Yang's eyes were also sparkling. Yundong laughed. If you want to see it, go and see it. But don't get too close to the horses, but... Madame Yang ran away. Only then did Dong Xiulan walk to her side and exhale softly. It's good that you're fine. Qingyuan came back earlier and said that your matter has been resolved. The Peng family won't find trouble with you. But I'm always worried about you not coming back. Annie Dong, don't worry. If one was not confident that I could solve the problem, one wouldn't have rushed forward rashly. Yundong quite liked Dong Xiulan. You said that Shao Qingyuan is back. Is he next door? I think so. You saw him in the county, didn't you? I did. He even did me a favor. Dong Xiulan immediately smiled. Am I right? Qingyuan is a good child. Yeah. As they were talking, Yunshu came in with a stick of candied hawthorn in his hand. Eldest sister, did you buy this for us? Just now. Uncle Feng said that there were many things to unload in the carriage, so he went to help carry them. He did not expect to see a few red sticks of candied hawthorn as soon as he got in. He was fine, but Yunke had already licked off half of the candy. There should be a few more skewers in the carriage. Give one to Zhengyu and the others each, and leave 2 for Uncle Feng to take home. Yunshu ran away again. When Yundong went out, Feng Daneng had already unloaded half of the things in the carriage. Beside him, there were people holding a stick of candied hawthorn in one hand and carrying small items on the ground with the other hand into the house. Yundong rubbed her forehead and chased them to the side to eat. She and Madame Dong brought everything back. The Zhou family's courtyard was not big, but they had a pig shed previously. Although they did not raise pigs anymore, they could still let the horse live in it after tidying it up. Feng Daneng had wanted Yundong to leave the carriage at his house, but Yundong saw that the children surrounded the carriage and were unwilling to leave, so he gave up. After Feng Daneng left, Yundong began to sort out the pile of things he had bought. She bought a lot of cloth. When she saw one of the navy blue cloths, she subconsciously felt that it was very suitable for Shao Qingyuan, so she bought it. Looking at this piece of cloth, she was a little stunned. It was not easy to give it away, right? Forget it. She would think about it later. Just as she was about to put it away, Dong Xiulan came in. Yundong, Qingyuan sent 2 pheasants over earlier. Are we going to cook them tonight? Her gaze landed on the cloth in her hand. This fabric looks good. Is it for Yunshu? Is the color too dark? Chapter 107. Buying field, studying, finding father, treating illness. Yundong suddenly felt a little guilty. However, He quickly adjusted himself and said, "It's not for Yinshu. It's for my father. When I bought the cloth, I counted the entire family. Only now do I remember that my father is not around." Dong Xiaolan was afraid that she would be sad, so she quickly said, "You'll definitely be reunited soon. You even bought so much cloth? If you trust my skills, we'll make a piece of clothes for each of you." "That's good." Yundong smiled. "Auntie's embroidery skills are good, so it's definitely not a problem for you to make clothes. But I have to make it clear that you have to be paid. One can't take advantage of Auntie." "How is this taking advantage? Look at how much good stuff our family has eaten from you since you came. You went to the county city and came back to buy candied hawthorn for Xian'er and the others. I'm so grateful. It won't take much effort to make a few sets of clothes. It's settled." With that, Dong Xiaolan left without waiting for her to reject. Yundong laughed and shook her head. She did not insist. After tidying up herself, she went to the kitchen to cook the 2 pheasants. They had agreed to make a salt-baked chicken and a spicy chicken for Shao Qingyuan. Dong Xiaolan had taken care of the 2 chickens, so Yundong moved much faster. In addition to the 2 chickens, she also bought other vegetables in the county city. When they were done, she asked Yunshu to send them to the neighboring house. After dinner, Yundong sat on the chair and pondered. Now that the blueprints were back, the Peng family would not cause trouble for him. Apart from the money she had to build a house and buy a carriage, she still had about 230 taels of silver. To others, it might seem like a lot, but to Yundong, it was not enough. Not to mention that she did not have a fixed asset like fertile land. She still had to send Yunshu to school, find Dajiang, and treat Madame Yang. These were all money-burning jobs where she could not save money even if she wanted to. She had to buy a few acres of fertile land. She could rent it out even if she didn't know how to grow it. Yunche's school was not in a hurry. She heard from the village chief that the school in town had to accept students above the age of 6. Yinshu would only be 6 years old after the new year. She could just ask around first. As for Dajiang, after the house was built, she wanted to personally make a trip to Qingyuan Prefecture. Back then, they had agreed to meet in Qingyuan Prefecture. If Dajiang was still alive, he would definitely go. However, after the chaos in Qingyuan Prefecture, it was hard to say what would happen next. In this era, there was no mobile phone network. It was too difficult to find someone. Also, Madame Yang's illness was actually what Yundong was most worried about at the moment. She was afraid that the blood clot in her brain would spread and aggravate her condition. She hoped that Dr. Song would come back soon. Knock, knock. A soft knocking sound suddenly came from the window. Yundong jumped up from the bed and immediately walked to the window. "Who is it? Me? Shao Qingyuan?" The corners of Yundong's mouth twitched. Wait a moment. She came out of the house and saw the man's tall and handsome figure under the moonlight. Damn it, why did it feel like every time they met, it was in the middle of the night? It felt like they were dating in private. The salt-baked chicken and spicy chicken are very delicious. "Thank you," Shao Qingyuan said. "We agreed that since you helped me, I'll cook delicious food for you. Besides, we ate a lot of the wild animals you hunted. That's why I'm here. I want to ask you for a favor." Yundong was stunned. "What favor?" Shao Qingyuan bent down and handed over a cloth bag by his feet. Chapter 108. Under the stove only then did Yundong notice that there was something beside his feet. "What is this?" "White flour," Shao Qingyuan said. "I'm going to bring that young Master Liu into the mountains tomorrow morning. I promised him that one would go deep into the mountains to kill the tigers. I might only be back in 2 or 3 days, so I won't have to bring some dry food. The steamed buns and pancakes in town are too disgusting. I want you to help make some." Yundong's eyes widened. "Tigers? You're going to fight the tigers? Have you fought them before?" "I did. Once, when he went deep into the mountains, he encountered an old hunter who was bitten by a tiger and was almost forced into a corner. He was the one who knocked the tiger down. Later on, the old hunter dealt with the tiger and gave him the bulk of the money. But you even brought that useless young Master Liu along this time. Won't he be dragging you down?" Yundong frowned. He felt that his decision was very unwise. If he wanted to fight the tiger, it would be easier for him to escape if he encountered danger in the mountains alone. But with such a rich young master, Yundong had a feeling that they were courting death. Shao Qingyuan said he insisted on following. What a prodigal son who wants to drag others down with him. Yundong regretted that she had only received 50 taels of silver in the day. One think it's better for you to knock him out and throw him into a tree. That's what one planned to do. Yundong was speechless. She could not help but laugh. Seeing that he had already made up his mind, Yundong could not say anything. She took the white flour bag. Wait a moment. 111 make pancakes for you now. In this weather, it won't be a problem to keep them for 2 or 3 days. Later, you can make them hot and eat them. By the way, can you eat spicy food? They'll make you some hot sauce. It'll warm you up. Shao Qingyuan couldn't help but smile when he saw her turn around and return to the kitchen. Okay. Yundong's movements were very light. Madame Dong and the rest were sound asleep and were a distance away from the kitchen. Once the door was closed, most of the sound was cut off. Although Shao Qingyuan's culinary skills were not good, he could still start a fire. One of them stood in front of the stove, while the other was sitting. The scene was indescribably harmonious. Yundong kneaded the flour and asked about what happened during the day. You were the one who caused Aunt Chui to fall into the water and the dogs to foam at the mouth. Back then, she had asked him to create 2 chaos in the residence in half an hour. It would be best if it was closely related to Peng Zhongfei. Moreover, it was the kind of unlucky thing that made people think that he had done too many bad things and received retribution. As expected, the 2 consecutive incidents made Peng Zhongfei believe her words without a doubt. Aunt Ci's matter had nothing to do with me. The dog was my doing. Shao Qingyuan originally wanted to light a fire in Peng Zhongfei's study, but before he could do so, he realized that Peng Zhongfei's first wife wanted to deal with his beloved concubine, Madame Chui. Shao Qingyuan watched coldly as his wife and concubines fought. When the servants went to Jinglan Manor to report to Peng Zhongfei, he went to find the ferocious dog. When it saw Shao Qingyuan, the dog bared its fangs at him and wanted to bite him, but he kicked it away. Then this dog foamed at the mouth. Yundong could not help but laugh when she heard that. She was very agile. When Shao Qingyuan asked her how to get the blueprint back, she said what she needed to say. There was nothing to hide from the 2 of them. When all the pancakes were done, Yundong gathered them all and handed them to Shao Qingyuan. Time was limited, so she could only make do with this. Shao Qingyuan was about to leave with the cloth bag containing the hot pancakes and sauce when Yundong suddenly thought of something and hurriedly stopped him. Wait a moment. Chapter 109. Who is Shao Qingyuan? Yundong ran into his room and quickly came out with the crossbow in his hand. I'll lend this to you, she said. But after you defeat the tiger, you'll give me 10% of the silver. It's not that I'm ruthless, but this is good stuff. You've seen it before. It's powerful and life-saving. Shao Qingyuan lowered his head and looked at the crossbow in his hand. His slightly lowered eyes seemed to flash. His fingers tightened slightly. After a moment, he looked up. He'll give you 20%. Yundong's eyes lit up. This guy was too smart. Only then did Shao Qingyuan leave. However, his back view made him look even taller. Yundong then tidied up the kitchen and went to sleep. The next morning, the entire Yongfu village became noisy again. It wasn't farm time now, and most of the people were chatting outside. Hence, they saw the gorgeous carriage that had sped over early in the morning. Everyone at the village entrance stood up with a whoosh. What's going on? The Gu family bought a carriage yesterday. Who bought it today? As soon as someone finished speaking, he heard the servant driving the carriage ask, Brother, how do we get to Shao Qingyuan's house? Shao Qingyuan? Who is it? There's no such person in our village. Did you find a wrong person? The servant was dumbfounded. What? There was no such person? Isn't this Yongfu village? It's Yongfu village, but there's indeed no one called Shao Qingyuan. Tell me in detail what that person looks like. He might be from the neighboring village. I'll help you ask around. Why ask? Madame Zhou couldn't stand it anymore. She squeezed in with a washing basin and couldn't help but roll her eyes at the group of people. Then, she said to the servant, Why are you looking for Shao Qingyuan? Don't tell me you're looking for trouble. The curtain of the carriage was lifted, revealing Liu Wei's face. He smiled and said to Madame Zhou, "I'm looking for him to help me. He's from this village, right?" Someone beside him recognized him. Wasn't this the young master behind Madame Fang and her daughter that day? The discussions at the side made Madame Zhou understand. It seemed that they were not looking for trouble. She heaved a sigh of relief and pointed to the left. Shao Qingyuan's house is at the foot of the mountain over there. Go over and you'll see a house under construction. Just go a little further. A villager exclaimed, "Isn't that the home of a wolf cub?" A wolf cub? That's right, the wolf cub seemed to be called Shao Qing something. This was a habit, and they almost forgot his original name. Liu Wei thanked him and asked the servant to drive the carriage to the Shao family. When everyone saw him leave, they followed behind curiously. Not long after, Liu Wei entered the Shao family's house. The villagers who had followed him here were a little far from his house. They only dared to stand at the entrance of the Zhou family's house and discuss. Shao Qingyuan had been waiting for him since a long time ago. Everything that needed to be prepared had been prepared. When Liu Wei arrived, he didn't even drink any water before he was called into the mountain. "Have you brought everything? We have to stay in a mountain for at least 2 days." When Liu An, the servant beside him, heard that he would be staying for a few more days, he immediately could not take it anymore. "Young master, why you're not coming back on the same day? Don't be silly. We have to go deep into the mountains to hunt tigers. How can we come back in a day? All right, stay in the Shao family obediently and wait for me to come back. Help Shao Qingyuan guard the house. Be smart. When Brother Zhou needs help in the room, help him. Don't put on airs." Liu An was about to cry, but he could not stop the young master at all. No wonder the young master did not even bring the coachman when he went out in the morning and only let him drive the carriage. Liu An wanted to cry, but had no tears. He could only watch as the two of them walked further and further away. When Madame Fang and her daughter rushed over after receiving the news, the eldest young master of the Liu family was nowhere to be seen. Chapter 11. Oh, what are you smug about? Madame Fang and her daughter were extremely regretful. Why didn't young Master Liu look for them first when he came? Why did he directly find out that the Shao family was here? The two of them sighed and looked in the direction of the foot of the mountain. When the other villagers saw this, they surrounded them. Previously, they did not dare to approach the Shao family. Now that Shao Qingyuan had left, they naturally wanted to know how young Master Liu met the wolf cub. Why did he let him bring him into the mountain? Speaking of this, Madame Fang and her daughter were a little smug. Madame Fang smiled and said, "It's all thanks to our Yulan that wolf cub knows young Master Liu. Everyone knows that my nephew just got married not long ago. This new wife is young Master Liu's mother, Madame Liu's favored maidservant. The new wife has a good relationship with our Yulan. When she went to the Liu family to see Madame Liu, she brought Yulan along. Yulan heard that young Master Liu is looking for a hunter who killed 2 wild boars not long ago. If he wants to enter the mountains, doesn't he need a familiar hunter? B0XL. Everyone was enlightened. So as to find a guide. Then you didn't tell young Master Liu about that wolf cub? Why not? But what kind of family is the Liu family? Who is young Master Liu? Why would he be afraid of a wolf cub?" Madame Fang said smugly, "My niece-in-law said that young Master Liu knows martial arts. Otherwise, why would he dare to follow the wolf cub into the mountain without bringing anyone? Don't underestimate him." "How much money can that wolf cub get by bringing him into the mountains?" someone asked. Madame Fang really didn't know about this, but it didn't stop her from thinking. Hence, after a pause, Madame Fang stretched out 2 fingers and shook them. "Definitely. 2 taels of silver. Of course. Young Master Liu has always been generous." Speaking of the Liu family, Madame Fang and her daughter really talked nonstop. Madame Zhou's face darkened. She held the wooden basin and snorted. Then, she turned around and went home. Her second daughter-in-law, Madame Song, was also in the crowd. Seeing this, she hurriedly followed and took the wooden basin from her mother-in-law. Madame Zhou walked away quickly. "One don't know what's there to be happy about. Is it worth it for her to be so smug when her nephew marries a maidservant who serves others? What is she thinking?" She even took it out and spread it around. "Don't you know that she's a widow? Look at the men around her. She's simply embarrassing our Qin family. Mother, don't be angry. Second aunt said that after Sister Yulan marries into the Wu family, she will also go to town. We want to see her a lot in the future. Madame Zhou sneered. She still wants to live in town? How much money does she have? If she goes to town, she will need money to buy anything. She might have to borrow from us again. If she borrows it, she won't return it. Besides, look at how petty she was just now. Is young Master Liu being generous by giving him 2 taels of silver? Even the Gu family's Yundong is... She instantly stopped talking. It was not good to say this outside, and it would not be good for others to hear it. However, when she thought of Madame Fang's expression, Madame Zhou felt uncomfortable. The two of them entered the house one after another. Just as they entered, they saw Niu Dan rushing out. Madame Zhou couldn't even stop him. Hey, where are you going so early in the morning? Niu Dan was lucky. He had only been in school for a few days, but he had already met a rest day. Where else can one go? Niu Dan had already run far away. Madame Song couldn't help but laugh. He must be going to the Gu family. Last time, after eating at the Gu family, he despised my cooking and said that eating meat was like eating grass. Yesterday, when he came back from school, he rushed to the Gu family. Yinshu even gave him a stick of candied hawthorn. Now, he can't wait to stay in the Gu family. Madame Zhou was stunned for a moment. Just as she was about to say something, a shrill cry suddenly came from outside. Chapter 111. Making the call, this voice suddenly became sharp, startling the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law who were talking. Madame Zhou quickly walked out. What's going on? What happened? Chun Liang also came out of the inner room. The few of them came to the front yard and saw Jin Yuexiang sitting on the ground crying. Village chief, our Liangzi is in trouble. His legs were broken. Chun Liang and the others were shocked. Before they could react, they saw Hu Liang being carried into the courtyard. Hu Liang looked terrible. The smell of blood on his body was extremely strong. His eyes were closed as he fell asleep. Chun Liang quickly took a few steps forward. What's going on? Who hit him? Jin Yuexiang immediately pointed to a man who was being held by the Hu brothers. That's him. Liangzi came back with him. That person struggled angrily, but did not break free. His face was ashen as he said, You guys really don't know what's good for you. I was kind enough to send your son back, but you guys are blackmailing me. Bah, if I had known, I wouldn't have cared about your son's life. Jin Yuexiang got up and rushed over to grab the man's face. What did you say? Say it again. Chun Liang quickly called his wife and daughter-in-law to stop her. What are you doing? He hasn't said it clearly. Why did you attack? Then he looked at the man and asked, What exactly happened? The man snorted. Uncle Chun Liang, Im Quan from the neighboring village. You should know my father, Jiang Fang. I've been working in the county city recently. This morning, one saw Hu Liang being thrown into the alley with blood all over him. One didn't know what happened, so one brought it back out of kindness. Who knew that when one sent him to the Hu family and wanted to leave, they would invite a doctor while entertain me hypocritically. After the doctor said that he couldn't keep his legs, the Hu family actually didn't let me leave. They even said that I beat Hu Liang up and asked me to compensate. I've never seen such a shameless person. If one had known, I wouldn't have cared about Hu Liang's life at all. Jin Yuexiang shouted, If it wasn't for you, would you be so kind as to send him back? My Liangzi is so pitiful. Why did he meet such a heartless person like you? You're going to be struck by lightning. Quan gritted his teeth. The one who's struck by lightning will be your Hu family. You raised a son who only knows how to steal. He deserves this outcome. Village chief, you heard him. He's admitting that he did it. Madame Zhou and Madame Song could not help but roll their eyes. When did he admit it? Chun Liang could not be bothered with her. He only asked Quan. Then do you know who beat him up? Quan immediately fell silent. Chun Liang frowned. Seeing that Jin Yuexiang wanted to make a fuss again, he glared at her. Go ahead, Quan. When I've asked around. Quan hesitated for a moment before saying, They said that Hu Liang's legs were broken by the people from the Peng family. As soon as he said this, everyone was stunned. Even Jin Yuexiang seemed to have choked. Quan had not mentioned this at all just now. He only said that they would naturally know when Hu Liang woke up. But how could it be the Peng family? The Peng family had no enmity with their family. What right did they have to break her son's legs? Jin Yuexiang was a person who bullied the weak and feared the strong. Quan was alone. Although she was sad and heartbroken that Liangzi had broken his legs, she still wanted him to compensate her under the instigation of her two sons. However, how would Jin Yuexiang dare to challenge the Peng family? It was at this moment that Gu Yundong entered the village chief's house. Chapter 112. Dream on Gu Yundong was here to buy fertile land from the village chief. Previously, because of Lu Wei's arrival, a large group of people had gathered at the Zhou family's door. After Madame Fang and the others left, Niu Dan ran over to look for Yunshu to play with. She knew that Chun Liang was resting at home, so she asked where there was fertile land to sell. But looking at the situation in the courtyard now, she seemed to have come at the wrong time. "Chief, can I come back later?" Chun Liang nodded at her, and Gu Yundong turned to leave. Jin Yuexiang suddenly reacted and jumped up. She pointed at Gu Yundong and said, "It's her. She must have done it." Speaking of how her son had offended the Peng family, she could only think of Gu Yundong, who had also gone to the Peng family yesterday. Her son's accident was definitely related to this brat. Gu Yundong was dumbfounded. She was just a passerby. What did it have to do with her? Chun Liang also felt that Jin Yuexiang was being unreasonable. "Why did Yundong hit your son? Your family compensated her 5 taels of silver." And Yundong also said that this matter would end here. "Jin Yuexiang, you don't like the young lady, so you threw dirty water at her. Can you still be a human?" Jin Yu was extremely furious. "It's her. Village chief, it's really her." Our Liangzi heard that this brat went to settle scores with the Peng family, so he followed her to the county to look for young Master Peng. In the end, he didn't come back. Fai lost his legs when he was sent back this morning. If it wasn't this girl, who did it? Chun Liang's face darkened when he heard that. "So you're saying that Hu Liang wanted to harm Yundong first?" Jin Yuexiang choked and quickly argued. "Didn't he fail? On the contrary, my Liangzi ended up like this. You are the village chief of Yongfu village. You have to stand up for my Liangzi." "That's right." The Hu brothers looked at each other and said, "Liangzi's life is ruined. He won't be able to support himself in the future. Gu Yundong has to pay 100 taels of silver no matter what." Gu Yundong's lips twitched. "Dream on. Why? Do you want to have a taste of being whipped by me?" The Hu brothers suddenly shut their mouths and did not dare to speak anymore. Although they had not seen Gu Yundong's actions with their own eyes, they had heard a lot, especially about their parents being sent flying with a kick. On the other side, Quan could not stand it anymore. One already said that it was the Peng residents who did it. The Peng residents spread the word that Hu Liang sneaked into the residence and stole something. He was caught red-handed by the servants of the Peng residents, which was why he was beaten up like this. Gu Yundong said, "Did you hear that? If you still think that one hit him, fine. Let's go to the Peng residence and talk about it. Let's see what's going on. Anyway, my family has a carriage, so it's convenient to enter the county city. But let's make it clear. If you accuse me, this won't be something that can be resolved with 5 taels of silver. Think about it clearly." As she spoke, she looked at the Hu brothers. The two of them quickly turned their heads away. Wrong, wrong. It would be easier to blackmail Quan than Gu Yundong. At this moment, Hu Liang finally opened his eyes. He vaguely heard his mother's voice and tilted his head. Jin Yuexiang immediately reacted and rushed up to shout, "Liangzi, Liangzi, how are you? Tell me what happened." When Hu Liang woke up, he was in so much pain that his forehead was covered in sweat. He immediately cried, "Mother, mother, my legs are gone. The Peng family broke my legs." All right, forget about blackmailing Gu Yundong now. Even Quan was no longer an option. Chapter 113. Guilty. As soon as Hu Liang said that, the Hu brothers felt that they were in trouble. But what could they do? The village chief was watching from the side. Madame Zhou and Madame Song pursed their lips secretly. They were very tired of the Hu family. Although they were from the same village, Hu Liang was a cancer in the village. It might be a good thing if his legs were broken. Jin Yuexiang did not know what these people were thinking. When she saw that her old son had woken up and confirmed that it was really the Peng family's doing, she panicked and hurriedly asked, "What happened? What exactly happened? Why did the people from the Peng family break your legs for no reason? Did you really go to their house to steal things? You're stupid. How dare you sneak into the Peng family? What will one do in the future?" As she spoke, she started crying. Hu Liang's body was in pain, and he became even more irritable after she cried. "I'm not dead. Stop howling." Jin Yuexiang was instantly choked and could not speak. Yundong quickly held it in so that her laughter would not agitate his family. Liang felt a headache coming on. He took 2 steps forward and stood in front of Hu Liang. He asked, "Tell me clearly, why did the Peng family break your legs? What did you do?" Hu Liang gasped in pain as he screamed. Even if the village chief was in front of him, he could not care less about his temper. "Why? How would one know why? I was knocked out after circling the back door of the Peng residence. When one woke up, I was in the Peng residence. Then, those servants of the Peng residence grabbed me and beat me up. They said that I stole something and threw me out after beating me up. That's not all. They even broke my legs later. I didn't do anything at all. Why don't you ask the people of the Peng residence yourself?" Liang was so angry that he almost fell backward. However, Jin Yuexiang was still saying, "Village chief, you heard it. You have to stand up for our Liangzi." Liang sneered. "Stand up for him? How? Listen what he said. There's not a single word of truth. What do you mean by being knocked unconscious and waking up in the Peng residence? What the hell was going on in broad daylight? Stand up for him? How dare you say that when Hu Liang was sneaking around in the past, he didn't think of asking me to stand up for him? Let me tell you, he was caught stealing something. It's already a light punishment to have his legs broken. If you have the ability, bring your 2 sons to the Peng residence and talk to them." Seeing that the village chief had pointed at them, the Hu brothers subconsciously took 2 steps back and said to Jin Yuexiang, "Mother, Liangzi is already like this. In the future, you and father can only rely on us. If the 2 of us offend the Peng family and are beaten up like this, how can our family survive? Besides, Liangzi is in the wrong. How am I in the wrong? Hu Liang was so agitated that he pulled at his wound. Before he could catch his breath, he fainted again. Liang was impatient, especially when he saw the blood seeping out of Hu Liang's body again. He quickly waved his hand. "All right, quickly carry him back and find a doctor to treat him. Don't you know what kind of person Liangzi is? His brother is right. He was in the wrong in the first place. Why are you making a fuss?" Jin Yuexiang was frightened by her 2 sons' words. Although she doted on her old son, she was still the most important. Her old son was already in such a state. She couldn't possibly have nobody to rely on in the future, right? Moreover, she actually felt that Hu Liang was lying. He must have entered the Peng residence to steal something and was caught red-handed. Since the village chief had already said so, he definitely did not intend to interfere. She could only let her 2 sons carry Hu Liang home. Chapter 114. Madame Zhou sending food only then did Liang heave a sigh of relief. He turned around and said to Madame Zhou, Hu Liang was spoiled to this extent by his parents. Every time he did something wrong, they didn't hit, scold, or teach him a lesson. They even protected him and doted on him like their eyeballs. Now, someone else has helped teach his son how to be a human. You guys have to remember not to raise Neo Dan to be like him. Madame Zhou and Madame Song nodded. Seeing that the matter had been resolved, Quan said goodbye. Liang expressed his apologies for delaying him. Quan is fine with it. The unreasonable Hu family had nothing to do with Liang. As soon as he left, Liang looked at Yundong, who was quietly standing at the side. A smile instantly appeared on his face, and he felt much more relaxed. Yundong, why are you here? I'm here to buy land from Uncle Chun. Yundong followed him to the central room. Liang was stunned. Are you planning to buy farmland? How much do you want? What kind of farmland do you want? I want to buy more than 10 acres first. It's best if it's a first-rate fertile land. She had asked around and found out that 1 acre of fertile land cost about 10 taels of silver. 10 acres was about enough. Chun Liang lowered his head and thought for a moment before saying, "That's not easy. You came late. Previously, there were a few acres of fertile land, but it was bought by the Wang family and the He family. The Wang family and the He family had fled here. Although the two families had yet to build their houses and did not plan to build them well, they found the land immediately. Yundong did not think of this at first. This was the difference between having experience and not having experience. Chun Liang wanted to remind her, but firstly, the two families acted quickly and bought it before Yundong came. Secondly, the Gu family situation was different. They did not have strong labor and had a few children to take care of. They probably did not have the time. I see. Yundong did not expect that 10 acres of fertile land was not easy to buy. Then Uncle Chun, help me take a look first. Let me know if you have any. He'll prepare the silver first. All right, he'll keep an eye out for you. Yundong thanked her and went home. However, just as she reached the front yard, she was pulled over by Madame Zhou. Yundong blinked in confusion. Madame Zhou took out a paper bag and handed it to her. This is the dried cinnamon that your Uncle Chun bought in town yesterday. Take it back. You can cook it and eat it as snacks. Andy, what are you doing? I can't accept this. Hurry up and take it back. Yundong was a little dumbfounded. Why did she offer her food for no reason? However, Madame Zhou forced it into her hand. If I give it to you, just take it. I didn't know that Brat Nyo Dan had been coming to your house to freeload for the past 2 days. I heard that he specially went to eat meat. His mother is really something. She only told me today. Take this food back. Otherwise, Anne will be angry. Yundong was stunned for a moment before she finally understood. Madame Song lowered her head slightly and smiled. She had actually told Madame Zhou on purpose today. She was a daughter-in-law. Her family could not make the decision, and the good things were not in her hands. Even if they were in her hands, she could not give them away openly. Fortunately, her mother-in-law was sensible and knew that she could not take advantage of others for nothing. Hence, she took out the cinnamon. Madame Song had a good impression of Yundong, especially Nyo Don's happy expression when he came back and talked about the Gu family. If Gu Yinshu had not been playing with Nyo Dan, that brat would not have been willing to study. She heard that he was praised by Master because of Gu Yinshu. Yundong could not refuse her kindness. In the end, she took the cinnamon home. As soon as she arrived at the Zhou family, she saw Madame Fang and her daughter loitering at the foot of the mountain from afar. Chapter 115. Dumbfounded Liu and Yundong thought of the mother and daughter's enthusiasm for Liu Wei and felt that it was a little painful to the eyes. Could this be a bad idea? She shook her head and turned to enter. As soon as she entered, she heard a commotion coming from the courtyard. She followed the sound and looked over. She saw Yinshu, Yunke, the Zhou siblings, and Nyo Dan standing in front of the horse shed with a small handful of hay in their hands. Liu Wei's manservant, Liu An, stood at the side and made a fuss as he spoke. You can't feed it too much. It won't be able to eat. Hey, Kiki, how many handfuls have you taken? Yunke opened her round eyes and made a 3 gesture with her hand. I've only taken the second one. It's very hungry. Don't talk nonsense. If one didn't eat for the entire night, the next day my stomach gurgles. Liu An vomited blood. You're a human. It's a horse. So you're bullying it? Yunke was furious. Liu An held onto the pillar of the horse shed at the side. Why was it like this? Why was it like this? He only saw the little girl eating a piece of fragrant oil pancake in her hand and was a little greedy. But why did he have to explain the key points of how to raise a horse to a group of children in the end? He was a page boy, not a groom, and definitely not a nanny. Yundong wanted to laugh, especially after Yunke said that. The other children all looked at Liu An accusingly. Nyo Dan words were even more shocking. I heard that those rich families don't treat horses as humans. You also said that they were horses. Of course, they couldn't be seen as humans. It's different for our family. They treat cows very well and give them all the delicious food. Nyo Dan family had a cow that his father and grandfather treasured. The children nodded and felt that it made sense. Liu An was at a loss for words. How would he prove his love for horses? Yundong coughed lightly and walked forward with a smile. Yunke was still holding the dry grass in her hand. She waved it and ran over. Eldest sister, Liu An bullied our horse. Liu An was speechless. Was she not even going to call him brother now? He was inferior to a horse. Yundong took the hay from her hand and put it aside. She said in a low voice, Liu An is right. Horses have very thin bellies, so they can't eat too much. She actually wanted to say stomach, but she was afraid that the children would not understand. When we feed the horses, it's best to cut the hay short, soak it soft or crush it so that the horses can eat happily. Just like Kiki, you can't eat cakes that are too hard and big, right? Yunke nodded, not fully understanding. Eldest sister is right. When you're free, you can even take the horse for a walk. Well, go now. Shu also threw away the hay. Eldest sister had said that the horse could not eat too much. Eldest sister was right. Yundong turned to look at Liu and thank you. Liu An's eyes widened. He really wasn't a nanny. However, when he thought of what his young master had said before he left, he resigned himself to his fate and left with the children. Then, the other children in the village followed. That night, Shao Qingyuan and Lu Wei didn't return. Madame Fang and her daughter waited at the foot of the mountain for a long time. In the end, they could only go home regretfully. However, the next day, the two of them persevered to the foot of the mountain again. This time they knew how to cover up. They took the basket and pretended to pick wild vegetables. Yundong was still unaware of their actions. When he woke up the next day, it was already a little late. The Dong family had already gone out. She walked slowly to the courtyard. She did not expect to see Yunshu sitting alone in front of the horse shed with his chin on his hand, mumbling something. Chapter 116. Going to town, Yundong was a little surprised and slowly walked behind him. The little thing sighed. Chaser, I can't take you out for a walk today. Brother Liu An said that he has something to do in the county city. The Zhou brothers and sisters have gone to the fields. Nyodan also went to school. Mother went to the river to wash clothes. I can't hold you alone, so I can only talk to you here. Chaser was the name they gave the horse yesterday. At that time, Liu An gave them a bunch of names for the horse, but it was too complicated for the children to understand. In the end, they felt that Chaser sounded very fast, so they decided on it. You have to be good. This way, they'll go and gather grass every day for you to eat. In the future, they'll even marry you and let you give birth to foals. Big sister said that when our house is built, you can still live in a big stable. It's very comfortable. By the way, yesterday, Nyodan taught me 2 words that I don't know. Do you want to know? You must want to know. After all, my elder sister took a fancy to you. You must be an eager-to-learn horse. 111, ride it for you immediately. As Yunshu spoke, he squatted down and used a branch to draw on the ground. After writing, she tilted her head and read it carefully. After wiping it off, she wrote again. Yundong watched from behind him for a long time. When she saw her small figure squatting on the ground alone, she secretly sighed. Yunshu had only been in Yongfu village for a short period of time. Now, the only good friends she had were Nyodan and Zheng Lu. Nyodan was going to school. Although Zheng Lu was young, he still had to work every day. Early this morning, he went to the fields with his brother and sister. Actually, Yunshu had to work in the old Gu family in the past. Seeing Zheng Lu busy himself, he wanted to follow. But how could Madame Dong let him do things for her? She stopped him and let him rest at home no matter what. She even fed the chickens in the backyard in advance and cleaned the courtyard. Yundong wondered if she should let Yunshu go to school. This child liked to study very much and was very intelligent. Even if the school in town only accepted children over the age of 6, Yunshu had basic talent and was only a few months older. Perhaps the teacher could make an exception and accept her. Their house had not been built yet. They did not have poultry, fields, or vegetables. There was a limit to the work they could do. They could try going to the school in town. At the thought of this, Yundong went forward and patted him on the shoulder. Why are you mumbling here alone? Yunshu suddenly turned around. When he saw eldest sister, he hurriedly threw away the branch in his hand and stood up. Elder sister, I'm talking to Chaser. What are you saying? He said that Brother Liu An isn't around, so I can't take him out for a walk. Yundong smiled. What's the big deal? We'll go to town later. Isn't it just nice to take a walk? Yunshi's eyes lit up. To town? Us? Yes. We'll leave when Mother comes back. Where's Kiki? She's eating in the kitchen. Yunshu sighed. Eldest sister, you really have to talk to her properly. If she continues to eat like this, she'll really become fat. She eats meat early in the morning. It's such a big bowl. As soon as he finished speaking, Yunke rushed out of the kitchen and pushed him twice. Stupid brother, baddie, he'll bite you. Yundong picked her up and shook her. Yes, the young lady was a little heavier than before, but it was not that serious. Compared to those children who were excessively fed and clothed, she still failed. All right, go back to your room and change first. When the two children came out after changing, Madame Yang had also returned. Chapter 117. 2 schools. After following Madame Dong to the river a few times, Madame Yang could go alone now. This was at the foot of the mountain. The laundry place was a little far from the other women in the village, so she would not meet many people. Madame Yang was also at ease. After drying her clothes, Madame Yang immediately went to change her clothes happily. The family set up the carriage. Yundong asked Yanshu to inform Zhou next door so that Madame Dong would not be anxious if she could not find them. Then, she got into the carriage and set off for town. Although they had all taken a carriage before, the carriage from before was rented. Now that it was their own, the feeling was definitely different. Along the way, other than Yundong, who was driving the carriage outside, the other 3 were all excited. It took 2 hours to walk to town. It was much faster to take a carriage. They arrived in less than an hour. Although Yundong had been to the county city a few times, it was her first time in town. This place was naturally not as prosperous as the county city, but it was also very lively. Yundong first inquired about the place where the carriage could be stored. When she came out of the carriage, she also asked about the school in town. There were a total of 2 schools in town. One of them was where Dan was. The teachers were a scholar in his 40s and his son. His son usually enlightened students who had just entered the school. The students of the scholar were slightly older. There was another school that was bigger than this first school. There were 2 scholars teaching. However, the difference was that this school accepted students based on money. Not to mention the problem of tuition, even the brush, ink, paper, and inkstone had to be bought by the school. Anyone who had brains would know that there would definitely be a lot of commission in between. Therefore, ordinary people could not afford to attend this school. Most of them were from families with good backgrounds in town. Yundong had never considered a second school from the beginning. Even the teachers in this school were like this. The atmosphere was too bad. Hence, after asking for the address of the first school, she brought the 3 of them to the door. Yanshu didn't know at first. He just followed his sister and took a look at the town's environment. He only turned to look at Yundong in surprise when he stood in front of a school called Wenmo Hall. Elder sister, why are we here? He remembered that Dan went to school here. Yundong squeezed his small hand. One brought you here to take a look. Why? You don't want to come? Yunshu was stunned, but his watery eyes seemed to glow. He wanted to come. Of course he wanted to come. Dan had told him a lot about the school. He didn't know how much he yearned for it, but his family was poor. He heard that all the money was spent on the house and the carriage. Studying cost a lot of money. He didn't want to add to his sister's burden. Yunshu pursed his lips and made up his mind. Just as he was about to say that he did not want to come, he looked up and realized that his eldest sister had already gone forward to speak to the concierge. After a while, she came back and led them through the door. This place was not big. According to Dan, they had 2 classes. One was a preparation class, and they were all children of his age. The other class was on the other side. Those students were all above the age of 10 and were prepared for the scientific examination. Yundong led the 3 of them all the way there. They could hear the students from the preparation class reading. They could vaguely hear Don's voice mixed in. When they were about to reach the central room, they suddenly heard a stern voice coming from the corner. What did one tell you? Look at what you did. Did you listen to the master? Chapter 118. Teacher Gu Yundong stopped in his tracks. Gu Yunke grabbed her hand nervously. The voice from the corner was still there. At this moment, another thin and childish voice sounded. Teacher, I just want to help my family do some work. My family is in trouble now. Father injured his hand, so the work in the field is slow. Think, what are you thinking? The teacher interrupted him sternly. I told you long ago that we are scholars. The hands of scholars hold pens and write. Look at how rough your hands are now. If you use your hands to flip through books, you can cut the pages. Gu Yundong frowned. What was this guy saying? However, the master seemed to get angrier as he spoke. If your family is in trouble, won't other families be in trouble? If you lack money, you can borrow it from the master. Why are you going to fields? If you want to help your family, you can go and copy books. Will the master stop you? The student lowered his voice even more. There are too many students copying books in town. My handwriting isn't good. The price given by the bookstore owner is too low. What's the reason for your poor handwriting? It's because you took your hands, which should have been holding a pen, to pick up a hoe. You're a scholar. A scholar should do his job. Have you completed the homework I set up every day? You still have the mood to go to the fields. It seems that you've read too little. Master, all right. I don't want to hear it from you. This matter will only happen once. There won't be a next time. Study hard and don't worry about anything else. You're very talented in studying. I believe that you'll definitely be able to pass the Tongxing exam next year. All right, go back. The student did not say anything else and walked out with his head lowered. He did not seem to be in a good mood. The teacher also came out. When he saw Gu Yundong and his family, he was slightly stunned. Then, his expression turned ugly. After the student left, he looked at the gatekeeper. What's going on? Who are they? Why are they brought here? Master, this family's surname is Gu. They want to send their children to school. The teacher glanced at them and quickly looked away. He frowned and said, Where are the men in the family? Didn't one tell you long ago that if there are women coming over, they will be brought to the madam's place? You ignored my words. If word gets out that this woman and I are alone in the same room, won't my reputation be ruined? Gu Yundong was speechless. She did not know if she should say anything. The gatekeeper hurriedly explained, This Miss Gu is the only one in the Gu family who can make decisions. Her father is not around. Madam left early in the morning, so I brought her in. The children of the Gu family know how to read, so Old Master can teach them. Since when is it your turn to tell Old Master what to do? So what if they know how to read? Even if they know how to read, you can't bring them to Old Master. Madam isn't here today, so let them come another day. With that, the teacher flicked his sleeves and turned to leave. He did not even speak to Gu Yundong and the others. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched violently. The gatekeeper was also depressed. He had only brought them in after receiving a few copper coins. He did not expect the Old Master to reprimand him. The smile on his face immediately disappeared. He said to the few of them in a low mood, You heard it too. Let's go. Come back another day. One told you long ago that the women are all entertained by the madam. Gu Yundong exhaled slowly. She held Gu Yang's hand and left. Madam Yang and Gu Yunshu hurriedly followed. Unexpectedly, as soon as they walked out of the door, two women came up to them. One of them looked a little familiar. Chapter 119. Not here. Gu Yundong took a few more glances at the woman and remembered. Wasn't this the in-law she had seen at Madame Fang's house? It seemed like her surname was Wu. According to Madame Fang, the family that was engaged to Qingyuan was indeed from town. Gu Yundong did not like Madame Fang and had an average impression of Annie Wu. Hence, even if she recognized her, she pretended not to know her and walked past the two of them. Unexpectedly, the gatekeeper suddenly said, Miss Gu, this is our madam. He pointed at another woman beside Annie Wu and said, You can tell madam about your brother going to school first. Gu Yundong smiled. There's no need. We still have something to do, so we'll leave first. She nodded at the teacher's wife and led the family out of an MO hall. The lady was stunned and asked the concierge, What's going on? The concierge explained their intentions. Madam frowned and did not say anything. However, just as he turned to leave, she saw Madame Wu looking at Gu Yundong's back thoughtfully. She could not help but ask curiously, "Why? Do you know him?" Madame Wu came back to her senses and said with a smile, "I've met her once. She fled here a while ago and settled down in Yongfu village. This family is not a good family. I heard that they like to take advantage of others and don't know what's good for them. You have to be careful. If such a family enters this school, I'm afraid your teacher will fall for her tricks." The madam's expression changed slightly. She knew her master's personality. He was pedantic and inflexible. Wouldn't he be at a disadvantage when he met someone scheming? After some thought, she instructed the concierge, "If you encounter that family again in the future, don't let them in. Not everyone is accepted in our school. Character is very important." Got it. Yundong could still feel Madame Wu's gaze from afar. They had only met once, so she did not know why she was sizing her up. She secretly shook her head. When she saw Gu Yunshu lowering his head and looking depressed, she could not help but reach out and rub his head. "What's wrong?" "Eldest sister." Gu Yunshu pursed his lips and looked up at her again and again. After a while, he seemed to have made up his mind. "I don't want to go to school anymore." Gu Yundong raised his eyebrows. "Why not? I heard what the teacher said. He doesn't allow students to work in the fields, but I'm the only man in our family. One have a lot of responsibilities. I want to work in the fields. One also have to do the work at home in the future." Gu Yunshu looked up and said very firmly. Gu Yundong was stunned. Looking at his tense little face, she felt her heart soften. She squatted down and looked at him at eye level. She smiled and said, "Okay, then we won't study here." Gu Yunshu nodded and blamed herself. "Eldest sister, one know that I was too willful. You clearly worked so hard to let me go to school. Not only did you ask Nyo Dan about the school, but you also bought a carriage to transport me. You even personally came all the way to the school to look for the teacher. In the end, the teacher even scolded you. One let eldest sister down. I'm a bad person." Gu Yundong was speechless. "Baby, although one know you can find all kinds of excuses for eldest sister's actions, isn't this a little too much? It's true that I asked Nyo Dan about the school for you, but buying a carriage was really just for my convenience. Moreover, it's not a long journey from Yongfu village to town." Chapter 120. Too disappointed Gu Yundong did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Yunshu, eldest sister approves of you not attending this school, not because you are too willful, but because eldest sister feels that this teacher is too pedantic and completely contradicts eldest sister's views." Gu Yunshu tilted his head. "In the past, father said that one has to pass many examinations to become a preparation scholar, an elementary scholar, a high scholar, and an honorable scholar. Every time they take an examination, they have to stay in a narrow shed for a day or even a few days. In such an environment, not to mention a weak scholar, even a strong man might not be able to last. Look at that teacher. Isn't he so fair and thin that he looks like he would collapse at the slightest breeze?" His thoughts are simply misleading. The imperial court even sets up a field leave every May to encourage students to go home and cut wheat. Why is it that in the eyes of that teacher, field work is something that students shouldn't do? She even suspected that the teacher was still a scholar because he was not feeling well in the examination hall. Moreover, the expression on the master's face when he was with a woman was as if she had tainted his innocence. It was simply blinding. Did he think that he was in high demand? She did not think that the teacher was a bad person. For what he said, if the student's family was in trouble, he would help. It was just that she did not agree with the teacher's views. It was better to find a suitable teacher. Gu Yunshu felt that what eldest sister said made sense. So that teacher is wrong. Gu Yundong pinched his face. "Let's not think about Mo Hall. Let's go to another school." Gu Yunshu was about to leave when he heard this and immediately stopped in his tracks. "But didn't you say that the school fees are very expensive?" "This is all hearsay. Eldest sister thinks that it's impossible to judge a school without taking a look personally. For example, when Mo Hall. Previously, she had heard the village chief brag about it. It was good in every aspect. Now that she saw the teacher, she felt that rumors were indeed terrifying." Gu Yunshu nodded and followed her obediently. But the result was not satisfactory. Yundong had just spoken a few words with the concierge when the other party asked for a tale of silver first. Later on, they happened to see a teacher who came out. His disdainful expression made people want to hit him. When the teacher saw that they were dressed averagely, he even asked the gatekeeper to chase them away. She would not come to such a lousy school, even if it was free. Yundong tried her best to restrain herself from beating him up and left with the three of them. Yunshu sighed faintly and slowly shook his head. He was simply too disappointed in them. Yundong, who had been holding his breath, was amused by his words. You're so worried at such a young age. It's not like there are only those teachers in this world. If there's no one in town, let's go to the county city. Why are you disappointed? To the county? Yes. Yundong's first choice was the town because it was close and convenient for transportation. Yunshu was young, so it was not a problem for him to be enlightened in the town. He could also go to the county when he was a little older. From the looks of it, she should know more about the schools in the county. Yunshu was extremely distressed. The tuition fees in the county must be very expensive. Both of them were deep in thought. After taking a few steps, they realized that there seemed to be two people missing behind them. Were her mother and sister? Chapter 121. Returning to the village, Yundong's eyebrows twitched. She quickly turned around to look for it and heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, they were only 3 meters away and were not lost. She held Yunshu's hand and turned back. She saw the two of them staring at a stall selling pears. Madame Yang swallowed and whispered, I'm not hungry. Yunke sniffed hard. I just want to smell it. I don't want to eat it. As the two of them spoke, they carefully moved their feet, wanting to leave the fruit stall. However, they did not succeed. After moving for a long time, they only managed to move half a meter. On the other hand, the old man selling pears was doing his best to persuade the customers to stay. These pears are very crispy and have a lot of juice. They're sweet and delicious. Why don't you buy 2 for the children? They're not expensive. They're all planted by my family. 1 copper coin for each. Yundong had already walked up to her. Seeing this, she could not help but rub her forehead. She had fruits in her spatial storage, but other than the few apples she took out last time, she did not take any out. One reason was that it was inconvenient to live in someone else's house. The other reason was that there were few fruits here. Coupled with the season, there were even fewer ripe fruits now. Just like apples, they couldn't even be bought in the county. The pears looked good. She looked at the stall in front of her and gave the stall owner 30 copper coins. She picked 30 pears. The old man's eyes lit up. He even gave her 2 more for free. Yundong wiped them with a handkerchief and gave them 1 each. Madame Yang happily took a bite. But Yunke frowned and looked up at Yundong. She said seriously, I'm just smelling it. I don't want to buy it. She was sensible. Yundong also nodded seriously. Yes, eldest sister wants to buy it. But let's agree that you're not allowed to stop while walking next time. Even if you want to smell it, you have to tell eldest sister first, understand? Otherwise, if eldest sister didn't notice, you and mother will be lost. Next time, she would hold the young lad's hand and let Yunshu hold Madame Yang's hand. Yunke nodded. Okay, it'll be obedient. Let's eat. Only then did the little girl bite hard, so sweet that her eyes narrowed. Yundong saw that it was getting late, and she had finished asking about the school. She ate a bowl of noodles at the noodle stall and brought her family back to Yongfu village. Yunshu got into the carriage and remembered something. Eldest sister, Nyodan is still in Wenemo Hall. If the teacher teaches him wrongly, will it be bad for Nyodan? Won't have to tell Nyodan. Yundong was stunned. This matter, she thought for a moment. Don't say any more. They'll talk to the village chief later. However, she felt that nothing would change. She did not agree with the teacher's concept, but most people in this era might still think that he was right. They felt that since they were studying, they should focus on one goal and not be distracted by anything else. Especially in the countryside, where their knowledge was limited, they felt that students should focus all their energy on studying. Going to the fields? We have parents and grandparents at home. We don't need you. Yundong shook her head and drove the carriage back to Yongfu village. Madame Dong was at home, holding the cloth that Gu Yundong had brought over and making clothes for them. Seeing them enter, she quickly stood up and helped lead the carriage into the courtyard. After she tied the reins, she whispered to Gu Yundong, "You didn't know that the Hu family was up to no good again after you left today." Because Hu Liang always caused trouble for Gu Yundong, Madame Dong could not help but pay more attention to the Hu family. Fortunately, he wasn't looking for trouble with her this time. Occasionally, she would collect things that were not often used. After that, in order to survive, Gu Yundong did not carefully read these books. When she saw the old man selling pears today, Gu Yundong suddenly had the idea of planting fruit trees. There were not many types of fruits here. The prices were not low, but ridiculously high. For example, the apple she had seen in the prefectural city. Moreover, fruits were not easy to preserve. The pear she bought today had actually been plucked from the tree for some time. Some of its skin was a little wrinkled. However, she had a spatial storage. Tom stopped inside. Even if she kept the fruits for a year or two, they would still be fresh. When it was not easy to sell the fruits in the county city, she could sell them to the prefectural city and further away. Even if she couldn't sell them, she could still make easy-to-storage food like jam and dried fruits. Coincidentally, she knew how to do all of this. To her, the most difficult part was actually the first step, planting fruit trees. Chapter 123. Determined Madame Fang and her daughter found it. Soil and protection issues and fruit tree cultivation techniques. After reading 2 thick books, Gu Yundong felt that it was almost the new year. Moreover, it was definitely not possible to rely on just 2 books. She had to find someone who had grown fruits to discuss it. She could still give a try. However, fruit trees could not mature in a short period of time. It was quite short for them to bear fruits in a year. Before that, she could only go elsewhere to buy seasonal fruits. Gu Yundong put the book back into her spatial storage. This time, she specially found a corner so that it would be easier to look for fruits again. Then, she picked up the bag of pears again and left. She had to test something and see if there was a market. However, when she went out, she realized that it was already very late. Dong Xiulan was already cooking dinner in the kitchen. She paused. One guest will have to wait until tomorrow. Gu Yundong decided to prepare the things first. She found 2 pieces of bamboo in the courtyard and started to peel them with a knife. It did not take long for it to be cut into more than 10 small wooden sticks. Gu Yunshu saw it and hurriedly ran over to ask, "Eldest sister, why are you cutting the wooden sticks?" "You'll know tomorrow." Not only did Gu Yundong cut the wooden sticks, but she also dug out many molds of various shapes. This time, even Gu Yunke and the Zhou siblings were extremely curious. They gathered around her and watched seriously. When Gu Yundong was done, she realized that there was a circle of children around her, including Madame Yang. She laughed and put the things away. "What are you all doing? Auntie is busy in the kitchen. Aren't you going to help?" The children instantly dispersed. After dinner, the sky turned dark. Shao Qingyuan and Lu Wei still hadn't returned. Liu An had returned from the county city, but he looked listless and uncomfortable. Gu Yundong guessed that he might have been scolded. Madame Fang and her daughter picked wild vegetables for another day and returned empty-handed. Gu Yundong wanted to laugh, but she had clearly underestimated the stubbornness of the mother and daughter. The next morning, when she went out to the homestead to look at the house that was being built, she saw them at the foot of the mountain again. Gu Yundong was speechless. "Did the 2 of you pluck all the wild vegetables at the foot of the mountain?" Feng Danning was beside her, looking energetic. "At this rate, we'll be able to set up the beams soon. When you're free, go to 6 grandfather's place and ask him to pick a good day for you." The start date of construction was chosen by 6th Master. He was considered the most senior elder in Yongfu village now. Chapter 124. Shao Qingyuan is back. It was a pity that she did not have a juicer. Otherwise, she would not be so tired. After squeezing the pears dry and filtering them twice until there was no residue left, She placed them aside as a backup. Then, she started a fire and took out rock sugar and malt sugar. Add pear juice and rock sugar to the pot. Boil it and add a certain amount of malt sugar. The temperature had to be very high. Yundong's forehead was already drenched in sweat. After boiling it for a long time and seeing that it was about time, she slowly poured it into the mold she had made last night. Afraid that she would not be able to take it out if it stuck, she specially applied a thin layer of oil paper under the mold. Then, she took out a small wooden stick. This wooden stick had been cut extremely thin by her, and it was not much different from the kind of wooden stick used for lollipops. When everything was done, there was a chatter at the door. Then, Guyang's childish voice could be heard. "It smells so good. Eldest sister made food." After saying that, she ran towards the kitchen and quickly saw the candy on the table. The little girl's eyes lit up. "Big sister, what is this?" "Fruit candy," Yundong said with a smile. She stopped her small figure. "You can't eat it yet. Wait until it's cold and solid." Actually, it was best to put it in the fridge for a few hours, but the conditions here did not allow it. However, the temperature was low now, so they did not have to wait too long. Yunke clicked her tongue and looked at her eagerly. "Then I'll help eldest sister keep an eye on her." "All right, just watch." The young lady insisted on torturing herself, so Yundong had no choice. But she was very obedient. If she said she would not eat it, she would not eat it. Yundong was very assured. After a while, the other children came in. Even Liu An sniffed as he walked to the kitchen. "What's that smell?" "It's sweet." "Candy," Yunke said. When she saw Liu An reaching out to take it, she immediately glared at him angrily. "Eldest sister said that you can't eat it yet." "I'm just looking." Liu An defended himself. The little girl put her hands on her hips. "You're clumsy. You can't touch it." Liu An felt that he had been discriminated against by the little girl. He wanted to defend himself, but Gu Yunshu and the Zhou siblings were already standing on the side with the little girl, guarding against him. Liu An was speechless. After all, he was the young master's servant. Why did they act like he had never seen the world? Gu Yundong had already left the kitchen. She took off her apron and went to Sixth Master's house. Since she was free today, she decided to pick a date first. She still had to make a trip to the county tomorrow. Sixth grandfather's house was not far from the village chief's house. He was already 78 years old. In this era, there were very few people with a high lifespan. Everyone said that sixth great-grandfather was blessed and that his children were filial. Now, he was also respected in the village. Sixth grandfather knew that it was inconvenient for them to live in someone else's house now, so they were in a hurry to move into the new house. Therefore, when choosing a date, he tried his best to choose the nearest one. Gu Yundong took the date and thanked him. She left a bag of soft pastries for Sixth Master before leaving happily. Unexpectedly, as soon as she went out, she saw Madame Fang and her daughter walking home. Beside them was Madame Zhou, whose expression was very ugly. Gu Yundong had sharp ears and eyes. She could vaguely hear Madame Zhou's dissatisfied voice. "It's not like we don't have vegetables at home. Even if you want to eat wild vegetables, you can go alone. Why do you have to surround the foot of the mountain all day? Your chickens have all run out, and the pigs are so hungry that they keep crying. Why? Don't you want to live a good life?" Gu Yundong suppressed his laughter and strode back. Unexpectedly, she heard Liu Weiss' exaggerated voice the moment she reached the Zhou family's door. Madame Fang and her daughter were too lucky. They had just left, but Shao Qingyuan and Lu Wei were already back. Chapter 125. Inquiring about something, Gu Yundong could not help but quicken his pace. The Zhou family's door opened, revealing Madame Dong's anxious expression. "Yundong, you're back?" "What happened?" Madame Dong sighed. "Qingyuan was injured. They'll bring him some medicine." "Injured?" Gu Yundong turned around and followed Madame Dong into Shao Qingyuan's house. As soon as she entered, Gu Yundong could not help but widen her eyes and gasp. It seemed like they had gained a lot in the mountains these past few days. Not only were there wild chickens and rabbits in the courtyard, but there were also 2 silly roe deers and a tiger. They had really caught a tiger. Could Shao Qingyuan have been seriously injured by such a big tiger? Gu Yundong retracted his gaze and hurried into the inner room. Auntie, if he's injured, you should find a doctor. She stopped mid-sentence and met Shao Qingyuan's clear eyes. After not seeing each other for a few days, Shao Qingyuan seemed to have lost a lot of weight. His clothes were tattered, and he looked a little disheveled. However, his eyes were still as bright as before. No, it felt more aggressive than before. Aggressive Gu Yundong blinked. When she looked again, Shao Qingyuan's eyes had become cold and indifferent again. Had she seen wrongly just now? Before she had time to think about it, Lu Wei's chattering voice had already sounded. I also asked him to see a doctor. I know Dr. Zhou from the county city's Onren clinic. He's skilled in medicine and will definitely be able to heal you. Don't force yourself. I know it's my fault this time. If it weren't for saving me, you wouldn't have been injured. I promise that next time, 111 obediently stay on the tree and won't come down again. There won't be a next time. Shao Qingyuan glanced at him. Liu Wei choked for a moment and waved his hand after a while. We'll talk about this later. Let's go see a doctor first. It's just a small injury. There's no need. Only then did Gu Yundong see clearly where Shao Qingyuan was injured. There was blood on his shoulder, but fortunately, it did not look very deep. Looking at him, standing there in high spirits, his life was definitely not in danger. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief. Shao Qingyuan glanced at her discreetly and smiled. He said to Liu Wei, "Go boil water. 111 go back to my room to apply the medicine." This wasn't the first time Shao Qingyuan had been injured. His family had prepared trauma medicine. The medicine that Madame Dong had brought was for Zheng Hu. It was useless to him. Seeing that he couldn't persuade him, Liu Wei felt a little vexed and guilty. He sighed and shouted at Luan, "Have you boiled the hot water? Your young master stinks." Gu Yundong had wanted to walk to his side and ask about the situation when they entered the mountain, but she immediately took a step back when she heard this. "Liu Wei, you're too obvious, aren't you? You actually dare to despise my peerless handsomeness?" He snorted and deliberately walked towards Gu Yundong. Gu Yundong picked up a stick and pointed it at him. Stop. Talk from this distance." Liu Wei was so angry that his nose was crooked. Fortunately, Luan ran over at this moment to let him take a shower. Seeing this, Gu Yundong returned to the Zheng family with Dong Xiulan. When they were done packing, Gu Yundong came over. Shao Qingyuan was still wearing the same tattered coat. Gu Yundong frowned. He and Liu Wei were both eating porridge while Liu An was preparing the horse. It seemed like they would be leaving soon. Gu Yundong immediately sat at the side and asked Liu Wei, "I want to ask you something." Chapter 126. Who is Brother Qin? You want to ask me for something? Liu Wei glanced at her, then turned around with a bowl of porridge in his hand with his back facing her. Back then, you were full of disdain for me. Now, you want to ask me questions just like that? Are we very close? The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. So be it. She turned her head and spoke to Shao Qingyuan. There's a lot of prey. How you plan to deal with them? Shao Qingyuan put down the bowl and said, "Leave these pheasants and wild ducks at home to eat. Pack them up and keep them. Young Master Liu bought that big worm. As for the 2 roe deers, one is for young Master Liu to bring back, and the other is for us to keep at home." Great. It just so happens that I haven't eaten roe deer meat before. Gu Yundong's eyes lit up. Now, Shao Qingyuan's food was brought over by the Zheng family. When he said that he'd keep the meat at home to eat, he actually meant that he would stay at the Zheng family's house and eat together. However, before he could finish speaking, Liu Wei suddenly turned around and almost threw out the porridge in his hand. "No, you have to give me both the roe deers. I specially followed you into the mountains to hunt for that roe deer. I prepared that for Brother Qin." Gu Yundong was still talking to Shao Qingyuan. "How much money did you sell the tiger for? Let me tell you, this thing is full of treasures and is very valuable. It's not cheap to sell. Don't be cheated by young Master Liu." Shao Qingyuan smiled and nodded. "This tiger skin is incomplete. There are several wounds on its body, and its fur color is not very pure. The price is a little low. The tiger bone and whip were sold according to the purchase price of the pharmacy. In addition, there's tiger meat Did the two of you hear me? Liu Wei suddenly placed the bowl on the table. We're talking about the roe deer. One said that I want both roe deers. Also, Gu Yundong, what kind of person do you think 1 a.m.? Would one go and cheat Shao Qingyuan? He saved me. AM1, that kind of ungrateful person. Who is Brother Qin? Gu Yundong suddenly asked. Liu Wei subconsciously replied. Brother Qin is an impressive figure. He was a scholar at 3 years old and a martial artist at 5 years old. He knows everything in the world. He's also the youngest top scholar in this dynasty. When he was 18 years old, he was appointed as the top scholar by the late emperor. Liu Wei suddenly shut up and snorted. Why are you asking this? Gu Yundong said, I'm just curious. Seeing that you value Brother Qin so much and insist on keeping both roe deers for him, he should be an impressive person. Listening to you, it's true. I didn't expect young Master Liu to know such a person. Of course, we're very close. Although Brother Qin might not remember him, he was definitely going to call him Brother Qin. Since he's the top scholar, shouldn't he be an official in the capital? Young Master Liu, are you sending the roe deers to the capital? Liu Wei shook his head. He's not an official in the capital. He's in Fengkai County now. In Fengkai County? What for? Liu Wei stopped halfway and snorted again. Why are you asking so many questions? Anyway, it has nothing to do with you. By the way, didn't you say that you wanted to ask me about something? What is it? Ask me. I'll tell you what one know. Gu Yundong resisted the urge to roll her eyes. Are you a pig? Why do you keep snorting? However, seeing that it was getting late, Liu Wei and the others should be leaving in a while. Anyway, he was no longer as awkward as before. I want to ask about the school in the county. However, Liu Wei suddenly stood up and knocked over the stool behind him. Chapter 127. School is settled. Gu Yundong was shocked by him. She looked up and saw his furious expression. Yuan was wondering why you kept asking me about Brother Qin. It turns out that you're waiting here. You also want your brother to enter Brother Qin's school, right? Gu Yundong was dumbfounded at first, but then her eyes lit up. Yeah, so this Brother Qin opened a school in Fengkai County. Wait a minute, Liu Wei just said that he was the top scholar, right? From the way he addressed him, that guy didn't sound very old. Gu Yundong looked at Liu Wei with a smile. Don't be agitated, don't be agitated. Sit down and calm down. Tell me about Brother Qin's school. Liu Wei was stunned. He looked at her for a long time and suddenly realized that he had confessed. He was instantly annoyed. He looked at Gu Yundong accusingly. I don't know what you're talking about. Hey, are you looking for a fight again? Shao Qingyuan had already finished his porridge and could hear their conversation clearly. He wiped his mouth and said to Gu Yundong, leave the 2 roe deers at home to eat. It's easy to keep them in this weather. See if you can figure out how to make more dishes with the deer meat. Liu Wei almost fainted from anger. He turned to look at Shao Qingyuan angrily. The latter turned sideways and aimed his injured shoulder at him. Liu Wei immediately became listless. He took a deep breath and told himself that this guy was his savior. He could not be ungrateful. After slowly calming down for a while, he said, forget it, forget it. It's not a secret anyway. Everyone in the county knows. Only people in remote places like you don't know anything. Gu Yundong raised his eyebrows. Go ahead. Brother Qin's original name was Qin Wanzheng. After he became the top scholar at the age of 18, he became an official in the Hanlin Academy in the capital. He was young and energetic, and he was also smart. He was full of ambition and wanted to make a contribution to the country and the people. But the late emperor, Liu Wei, paused. There was no need to elaborate. Everyone knew. The late emperor was muddle-headed and tyrannical. It was not easy for you to achieve results. Many loyal officials were depressed and even beheaded. In the beginning, Qin Wanzheng was also suppressed everywhere. Fortunately, his position was not high and he did not have any backing or real power. In the eyes of those in high positions, he was not a threat. Although someone like him could easily become a pawn for others to use, Qin Wanzheng still had a brain. He had safely dodged several dangerous situations. It was also because of this that he no longer charged forward. After that, for some reason, Qin Wanzheng suddenly resigned from his post and traveled far and wide with his wife. In the end, they stopped at Fengkai County. Others didn't know the reason for his sudden resignation, but Liu Wei's family had connections. It was said that Qin Wenjing had met the crown prince, who was now the new emperor, before he resigned. No one knew what they had discussed. Liu Wei lowered his voice. Let me tell you, now that the new emperor has ascended the throne, a capable person like Brother Qin will probably be summoned back to the capital soon. Therefore, it's impossible for you to send your brother to study in his school. How can he still accept students at this juncture, right? Oh, Yundong was enlightened. She looked as if he had a point. However, in the next moment, her voice changed and she asked with a smile, Then why are you giving him the roe deer? Isn't it to enter his school? Chapter 128. Madame Fang wants to see young Master Liu Wei realize that this woman was not easy to deceive at all. She was too uncute. He sat back down angrily. I'm friends with him, aren't one? Seeing that he might be returning to the capital, I'm sending him some delicious food. Besides, I'm already so old. How can one enter his school? Yundong nodded. Isn't that just nice? You have a relationship with him, and one have a relationship with you. Then do me a favor and talk to him nicely. How about he accept my brother as a student? Didn't I say that I know, but didn't you say that it's possible for him to return to the capital? It's just a possibility. You're not sure yet. Of course, even if he really wants to return to the capital, he used to be the top scholar in the examination. His knowledge must be very good. It's worth it for my brother to be his student for a day or a month, right? Liu Wei's eyes widened. F***, 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 F***. Could this woman read his mind? How did she say what he was thinking? Yundong looked at him with a smile. Beside him, Shao Qingyuan tilted his shoulder. Liu Wei held his chest. Why was he so kind? If he was as heartless as Peng Zhongfei, he wouldn't have to care about this adulterous couple. After a moment of silence, he finally gritted his teeth fiercely. He lowered his head and muttered, What friendship? One don't have any friendship with Brother Qin. Otherwise, why would I send roe deer meat so that my brother can enter his family school? Cough, cough. Yundong choked on her own saliva. Liu Wei flew into a rage out of humiliation. Why? Do you think it's so easy to enter his school? The young master of the county magistrate's family wanted to learn from him, but was rejected. He didn't give him any face at all, okay? Brother Qin has his own way of accepting students. It's not useful just because you're rich and powerful. It's also not based on talent and looks. It's not easy to enter, okay? Could it be that the roe deer meat? Yundong guessed softly. You're smart. Yundong was speechless. Why did she feel that this reason was even more unreliable? However, Liu Wei lowered his voice mysteriously and said, This is a secret that one deduced myself. I've asked someone to keep an eye on the Qin family for a long time. I realized that the servants of the Qin family often go to buy wild animals. Last time, Brother Qin took in a student because that student's father gave him a large piece of roe deer leg. I promised my father that I would definitely send my brother to his school. That's why one entered the mountains fearlessly. Do you think it's easy for me? So you're not allowed to snatch it from me. Yundong felt that it was even more unreliable, especially when Liu Wei said that he had deduced it. The credibility was zero. When are you sending the roe deer to his house? In a minute, while it's fresh. Yundong smiled. Bring me along. Not a chance. Yundong analyzed for him. Look, you want to bring 2 roe deers and a tiger to the county city. Oh, and the few of you. That carriage will definitely not be enough. 111, lend mine to you. Besides, I guarantee that I won't say a word when I go. I'm just going to see the world and won't fight with you for the spot. Besides, one might be able to help you. Liu Wei frowned. Why did she sound so reasonable every time she spoke? That's fine. His stance could be said to be very unstable. Shao Qingyuan saw that they were done talking. Let's go then. As soon as she finished speaking, Dong Xiulan suddenly came over from next door. She looked at Liu Wei and said, Sister-in-law Fang is here. She wants to see young Master Liu. Chapter 129. So what if I hit you? Lu Wei was confused. Sister-in-law Fang? Who? It's the mother and daughter who brought you to Yongfu village, Yundong said. This person's memory was really bad. Lu Wei suddenly reacted. It's them. Then let them come over. Dong Xiulan was in a difficult position. She hesitated for a moment before saying, they said they don't dare. That was why she went to the Zhou family and waited for young Master Lu there. Lu Wei frowned. Don't dare what? Don't dare to see me? They don't dare to see me. Shao Qingyuan said. Lu Wei blinked. Why, halfway through, he remembered. Oh, I know. Back then, they seemed to have said that you were a wolf cub and were very scary. Yundong glared at him fiercely. Don't speak if you don't know how to speak. You are the wolf cub. Shao Qingyuan saw her small actions and couldn't help but smile. He was in a good mood. Lu Wei, on the other hand, was baffled by the glare. He said with a dumbfounded expression, I didn't say anything. But then again, why do they call you a wolf cub? I don't think you're scary at all. TSK, forget it. Since they don't dare to come, don't come. I'm busy. I want to see them. In any case, they were not familiar with each other, so it was probably nothing important. Yundong wanted to laugh. How many times had Madame Fang and her daughter been back and forth at the foot of the mountain? Previously, they had been brought home by Madame Zhou. When they heard that Shao Qingyuan and the others were back, they immediately ran over. Their spirit was really admirable. Dong Xiulan went back. She was just passing on the message. She wasn't familiar with young Master Lu, so she naturally wouldn't say anything. Lu Wei immediately threw Madame Fang and her daughter to the back of his mind and began to urge Yundong. It's getting late. Let's set off now. Hurry back and prepare the carriage. We'll leave immediately. All right, let's make things clear first. JVilly carriage is meant for people. Without waiting for Lu Wei to retort, she continued, my carriage is newly bought. If you put the tiger and roe deer inside, what if my horse is frightened because it hasn't been trained? Lu Wei could only nod when he heard that. Only then did Yundong leave the Shao family and return to the Zhou family. Unexpectedly, Madame Fang and her daughter did not leave. Qingyuan immediately stood up when she saw Yundong. She walked up to her and asked, why doesn't young Master Lu want to see us? How would one know? Yundong looked puzzled. Did you say something to young Master Lu? Did you say something bad about us? You were in the Shao family just now, right? One couldn't tell, Yundong. In order to get close to young Master Lu, you're not even afraid of the wolf cub. Yundong looked at her coldly. Say that again. You act like you don't care about anything on the surface, but in fact, aren't you trying to climb up the social ladder? When you saw that young Master Lu was rich, you waited eagerly. You didn't even care about avoiding suspicion. As soon as he came back, you stuck to him. Slap. Yundong raised her hand and slapped her. Madame Fang had been watching coldly from the sidelines. When she saw this, she rushed over and pulled Qingyuan back. Then, she looked at Yundong in shock. How dare you hit someone? So what if one hit you? Your mouth is so dirty. You should wash it properly. Yundong took a step closer. Do you think that everyone has the same thoughts as you? Who is the person who has been wandering around the foot of the mountain for 2 days? Do you think that everyone is blind and can't see clearly? Who in the entire village doesn't watch you and your daughter make a fool of yourselves? If it weren't for the village chief, you would have been spat to death. Chapter 130, Sudden Despair. 2. Zhao Ritian waved his hand and decided to settle this matter quickly. When the 5 people opposite heard Zhao Ritian's words, they immediately revealed happy expressions. They knew that this matter had finally been resolved. However, just as the 5 of them were about to leave, a sudden change happened. Ow! Suddenly, a roar came from behind the 5 of them. The sudden sound frightened the 5 people because they were very familiar with that cry. That cry was completely a zombie's cry. The 5 of them hurriedly turned around and were shocked to see that their boss had turned into a zombie. At this moment, their boss still had an arrow stuck in his head, but it did not affect the other party's activities. After the other party saw the 5 of them, he pounced on them. Faced with this situation, the other 5 people had never expected to see something like this. Especially shocking was their boss, who suddenly turned into a zombie and pounced over. This development immediately frightened the 5 people. All of them wanted to escape quickly. Unfortunately, the boss didn't become completely stiff after turning into a zombie. He quickly pounced on one of them. Then, they heard a series of tearing sounds. The young man who was pounced on was instantly bitten by the zombie boss. Quickly pull away from the other party. Ah, no, you can't pull away. He will be infected if it's already bitten him. At this moment, the others immediately reacted. A few of them wanted to pull away from the other party, but when they thought that the other party had already been bitten, they completely gave up on this idea. What are you looking at? Run quickly. Let's run in all directions. Run in all directions. Hurry. Upon hearing this sudden sentence, the remaining 4 people instantly ran in 4 directions. Now that a zombie had appeared in this place, it was completely unsafe. Therefore, they could not stay here. The most important thing was to leave this place first. Just as Zhou was about to leave with his sister, he suddenly realized that the 2 people who had been shot by his sister had also gotten up. After they got up, they charged towards Zhou and his companion. They opened their bloody mouths, looking extremely ferocious. It was as if they were going to take revenge on Zhou and the other person for the previous hatred and conflicts. Seeing the 2 zombies rushing over, Zhou did not escape immediately. Instead, he gritted his teeth and raised his shield, knocking one of the zombies to the ground. Quick, go and help my sister. I'll deal with this zombie, Zhou hurriedly said to Chu Xiao. At the same time, he held his shield and kept hitting the zombie that he had knocked to the ground. Bang, 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 bang. A crazy smashing sound rang out. Zhou ruthlessly smashed the zombie on the ground, not letting it move at all. At the same time, Zhou sister also raised her bow and shot the calf of the zombie opposite her. Soon, the zombie fell to the ground. Clearly, she knew very well how to deal with such zombies. They had to have dealt with many other zombies before, which was why they were so experienced. They'll control his movements. You think of a way to smash his head. Zhou sister quickly revealed her plan. They had dealt with this kind of zombie before. They knew that as long as they smashed their heads, they could get rid of the zombie in front of them. As long as they attacked fast enough, they could completely finish off the 3 zombies quickly. When Chu Xiao heard this, he did not do anything. Instead, he just watched calmly. When Sister Zhou Yutian saw Chu Xiao's actions, she immediately felt that something was amiss. However, she had no room to keep talking and persuade him. Instead, she hurriedly took out a hammer from her backpack. She walked past Chu Xiao and smashed the hammer in her hand on the zombie's head. Immediately, blood splattered. Soon, after a series of crazy beatings, the zombie was finally killed completely. Chu Xiao could tell that the other party had specially thought of a way to flip the zombie's body so that the back of its head was facing the sky. The other party was desperately beating the back of the zombie's head into pieces. At this moment, Zhou had also finished off the other zombie, using the shield in his hand to smash the back of the zombie's head into pieces. Clearly, the 2 of them had already discovered the zombie's weakness, so they attacked very decisively and ruthlessly without any hesitation. After his sister intercepted the 2 zombies, Zhou and his sister hurriedly looked at the last zombie. However, at this moment, something even worse happened. Help! No. Why are there so many zombies here? Where do they come from? The 4 people who had escaped previously actually ran back one by one. However, the 4 of them were in a very bad state because 2 of them were actually holding each other's arms and necks. It was obvious that they were injured. In addition, they could completely understand what the other party had said earlier. The other party had been bitten by a zombie. Stop following us. You've all been bitten by zombies. You'll definitely become a zombie. Do a good deed and lure the zombies away. The other 2 young men shouted angrily at the 2 people who had been bitten. In their opinion, since he had already been bitten, he should not continue to follow them. They might as well act honorably and sacrifice themselves to lure the 2 zombies away. That way, the other 2 could be safe. Don't even think that he'll die alone. Don't even think about surviving on your own. We must die together. The eyes of the two young men who were bitten were also red. They didn't care at all and couldn't help but roar angrily. The argument between the two immediately attracted the attention of the other zombies. Soon, a large number of zombies rushed over from all directions. Clearly, they were attracted by these four people. After seeing the current situation, Qin and his sister looked at the current situation in despair. If there were only a few zombies coming at them, they would have the confidence to think of a way to escape, but the zombies' numbers were already too terrifying. The current number was no longer that simple. It was no longer a question of whether they could escape, but a question of whether they could keep their corpses intact. Sister, it looks like this is the end of us. It looks like we have no way of leaving this place, Qin said helplessly. Although he said that there was no way, his eyes were filled with unwillingness. Although Sister Qin did not say anything, a very sad expression appeared on her face. She had not expected that they would encounter such a thing when they were clearly about to leave this place. It seemed that this was their fate. All right, we're all going to die here next. What a pity. I've never touched a girl's hand in my life, Qin said with some distress. Now, he felt that he was really regretful. However, at this moment, he suddenly saw Chu Xiu walking in. It indeed made him feel a little strange. Hey, brother, why aren't you afraid at all? Could it be that you've already ignored life and death? At that moment, he was a little puzzled. This was because Chu Xiu did not look like someone who was facing death at all. Instead, he looked like he was on an outing. It's very simple, because these zombies are not a problem for me, Chu Xiu replied very calmly. Brother, your mental fortitude is really good. You can actually make such a cold joke at this time, Qin said speechlessly. He did not expect Chu Xiu to be so good at making cold jokes. Now, he felt that there was indeed something wrong with Chu Xiu's brain. Since he could still say such words at a time like this, he only felt that it was a little ridiculous. Looking at the huge number of zombies rushing towards them, Qin suddenly wanted to smoke a cigarette. This was because the scene in front of him was very similar to the scenes in movies. The male lead was facing a large group of zombies as he smoked calmly and bravely faced this group of zombies. Chapter 131. Familiar figure Madame Fang took a step back and looked up to see Chun Liang walking out. She immediately started crying. Sister-in-law, you're poking at my heart. I've been Brother Tian's widow for so many years and rarely left the house. One didn't expect to hear you say this. I might as well die. Madame Zhou sneered. Go back to your house and cry. Chun Liang frowned and walked out from behind Madame Zhou. All right, you're her sister-in-law. What are you saying? Yes, one don't know how to speak. She didn't do anything wrong. 111 leave. Madame Zhou glared at Chun Liang fiercely before turning around and returning to her room. Chun Liang frowned even more and looked at Madame Fang impatiently. Why didn't he feel that Madame Fang was so unreasonable in the past? Don't cry anymore. Your sister-in-law has been in a bad mood for the past 2 days. Don't take what she said to heart. Go back first. Uncle, you also think that what I did was wrong, right? One really don't have any other intentions. It's just that young Master Liu's family is in the county city. They have a big family and power. In the future, when Yulan marries into the Wu family, the Wu family will also want to do some small business in the county city. If we can build a relationship with young Master Liu, it will be helpful to the Wu family. Yulan will also have a status in the Wu family. Chun Liang sighed. All right, I understand. You guys can go home first. Seeing that he did not believe her, Madame Fang was a little anxious. However, Chun Liang looked like he was unwilling to say more. She could only bite her lip and bring Chun Yulan home. At this moment, Yundong had long forgotten about the mother and daughter and had already prepared the carriage. On the other side, the big tiger and roe deer had already been loaded into Liu Wei's carriage. However, Luan was a coward. Even if it was the tiger's corpse, he was still very afraid. Therefore, he could only let Shao Qingyuan drive the carriage. Luan ran to Yundong's side and jumped into the carriage. As a result, only Yundong and Liu Wei were left in the carriage. Yundong was speechless. Liu Wei, when the carriage left the village, Yundong suddenly shouted, Luan, come in. 111 Drive the carriage. Liu An was so frightened that he subconsciously entered the carriage. Yundong took the reins and sat on the shaft, swaying. Liu Wei's face was ashen. He was despised again. Yundong drove the carriage behind Shao Qingyuan. Her driving skills were not very good. Shao Qingyuan saw that there was still time and slowed down slightly. When they arrived at the county city, the surroundings immediately became lively. Windchaser was a good horse. He was used to following behind Shao Qingyuan's carriage and did not need Yundong to exert much effort. Qin Wensheng's school was in the east of the city. Liu Wei had to return to the Liu residence to bring his brother over first. Unexpectedly, when they were about to reach the Liu residence, Yundong suddenly saw a familiar figure flash past. She was suddenly stunned. She sat up straight and turned around. At the next moment, she grabbed the reins and jumped down from the shaft. Liu An, come out and drive. Want to have something on? He'll be back in a while. With that, he ran away. Liu Wei lifted the curtain of the carriage and only had time to see her back view. Shao Qingyuan, who was in front, also heard it. He subconsciously stopped the carriage and jumped down, wanting to chase after her. She was stopped by Liu Wei. She said she'll be back in a while. Anyway, I've already told her the address of Brother Qin's school. She'll find it. Liu Wei felt that since she was in such a hurry, she definitely wanted to go to the toilet. Chapter 132. It's Dajiang. But Yundong had already chased after the familiar figure in front of her and turned into another street. The person in front walked very quickly. Yundong could only call out to him, Dajiang, Dajiang. However, that person did not react at all. In the blink of an eye, he entered an alley. Yundong hastened his pace, afraid that the wrong person would disappear. However, this street was a little congested. There were even stalls in front. Yundong was anxious and could not care less. She directly passed through the stall. She thought that she would be able to jump over, but the stall owner suddenly stood up. Yundong avoided her, but she did not avoid the basket on the ground. The basket fell, and Yundong could vaguely feel the things inside fall out. She did not even have time to take a look. She only said to the stall owner, "I'm sorry, big sister. 111 come back and compensate you later." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned into the alley. Seeing that the person in front of him had not disappeared, Yundong finally heaved a sigh of relief and hurriedly ran forward. Dajiang, father, that person turned around and Yundong choked on her words. No, it wasn't Dajiang. She had recognized the wrong person. That's right. This is a small county city under the Xian'er prefecture. The probability of meeting Dajiang is too low. How could it be him? However, this person's side profile was too similar. That person looked at Yundong in confusion. "Miss, what's the matter? If there's nothing else, I'm leaving. I'm on my way. I'm sorry. I mistook you for someone else." Yundong smiled apologetically. After watching the person walk away, she let out a sigh of relief and patted her face. "It doesn't matter. We'll find him one day." Right, that vendor. Yundong hurried back to the basket that she had knocked over earlier. Only then did she see what was in the basket. It was oranges. More than half of the oranges had fallen to the ground. The couple who sold them were squatting on the ground to pick them up. Yundong quickly picked the oranges up and lowered her head to apologize. "I'm sorry. I ran in a hurry just now and knocked over your basket. Count how many of them are broken. It'll compensate." "No, no need. No, it's not broken." The man at the side immediately waved his hand and shook his head repeatedly. Yundong looked up and met the man's face. He was stunned. "You are," he looked familiar. However, the man suddenly lowered his head and turned slightly to avoid her gaze. Yundong frowned and looked at the woman beside him. Then, she came to a realization. "It's you." Zhuangzi's parents had seen him once, so they almost didn't recognize him. Zhuangzi's father was called Shi Dashan, and his mother was called He Yi. According to Dong Zuian, this couple was very timid. It seemed that they had encountered something in the past. Now, they did not dare to fight or snatch anything. They would retreat when they could. She did not know how these two cowards raised their children. Her son had become a rogue, and her daughter was also smart. No wonder when she had asked the four families to compensate her. The Hu family had pestered them endlessly, but this family had immediately nodded and said that there was not enough money. They had obediently gone to gather money. They were so obedient that Gu Yundong felt like he was bullying an honest person. Miss Gu, the oranges aren't broken. Let's just wipe them. If you have something to do, go ahead, he said softly. In the eyes of the couple, Gu Yundong was a little scary. After all, even someone like Hu Liang could not do well in her hands. Not only was he beaten up, but he also lost money. Chapter 133. Brother Qin. Take it for a moment. Gu Yundong felt that she might be a devil. The corners of her mouth couldn't help but twitch. She placed the oranges in her hand into the basket. Then, she narrowed her eyes. She hadn't looked carefully just now, but now she noticed that the oranges in the basket were all plump and round. The skin was yellow and orange, and the shape was even. They were arranged neatly in the basket and looked indescribably beautiful. Did you plant this? Gu Yundong asked. He was stunned for a moment before nodding. We planted them. There aren't many of them. The fruits this year are quite good, so we chose this place to sell them. Do you want to eat them? These oranges are delicious. Gu Yundong nodded. He smiled and immediately peeled the orange for her. Gu Yundong looked at the orange in her hand. It was thin and juicy. After tasting a piece, her eyes lit up. It was really delicious. It was natural and unpolluted. It was even sweeter than the oranges in her space. She looked at the couple in surprise. She did not expect them to have such ability. Rubbing her chin, Gu Yundong wondered if she should trick the two of them into helping her plant the orchard. She was in need of experienced manpower. She would ask the village chief about their past. If it was appropriate, she could get busy. Gu Yundong ate an entire orange in a few bites and then picked a few more from the basket. He and Dajiang looked at each other. They were both worried, but they did not dare to say anything or ask anything. After Gu Yundong picked 4 or 5, he stopped, looked up, and said, I'll take these first. Can you sell the remaining 20 or so and bring them back to Yongfu village for me? I don't have anything to pack and can't take them. They'll pay the money to you when one return to the village later. All right? Dajiang blurted out. You want to pay? Gu Yundong blinked. Don't one have to pay for things? No. Did they think that she was a freeloader? Dajiang shook his head repeatedly. No. That's not what I meant. Gu Yundong held his forehead. This expression was simply exposing himself. Seeing that it was getting late, she bade them farewell. Then it's settled. I still have something to do, so we'll leave first. She came and left in a hurry. Carrying a few oranges, she went straight to Qingyuan's school. She was panting after running for so long. But before she could reach her destination, she saw Shao Qingyuan and Liu An walking over with the carriage. As for Liu Wei, he followed behind the carriage dejectedly, looking like he had nothing to live for. Was this to failure? And why was he out so quickly? Where was his brother? Didn't he say that he would go to the Liu residence to pick up his brother first? According to Gu Yundong's speculation, it would take at least an hour for Liu Wei and the others to return to the Liu residence to pick up their younger brother and then go to Qingyuan's school to deliver the roe deer meat. Right? At the very least, if Liu Wei nagged seriously, it would definitely take more than an hour. But how long had it been? Gu Yundong walked over and distributed the oranges in his hand to Shao Qingyuan and Liu An. He asked softly, Is his brother Qin unwilling to accept his brother as a student? No, he isn't, Shao Qingyuan said. Gu Yundong's eyes widened. He actually accepted it, but she pointed at Liu Wei in surprise. Then why does he look like the sky is falling? Look. At this moment, he was knocking his head against the carriage. Liu An was so frightened that he almost threw the orange away to save him. Chapter 134. Bring back the roe deer. Before Shao Qingyuan could answer, Liu Wei was already standing in front of Gu Yundong. His eyes were wide open, and his lips were pursed tightly. He panted heavily, looking furious. Yundong blinked and blinked again. Wasn't it your wish to accept your brother? But what does that have to do with me? Huh? Yundong replied. Liu Wei was already exasperated. Brother Qin accepted my brother not because I risked my life to go deep into the mountains to hunt those 2 roe deers, but because he owes my family a favor. Yundong was enlightened. So, even if you didn't give him the roe deer, he would still accept your brother, right? That's right. His father had lied to him. This definitely wasn't his biological father. No. Yundong narrowed his eyes and glanced at the carriage behind him. He asked, Then, can you give me 2 roe deers? I've already given them to Brother Qin. Since those 2 roe deers are useless, why did you give them away? Yundong wanted to pry open his brain to see if they were made of paste. Liu Wei also wanted to cry. Do you think I want to? One gave him the 2 roe deers before he told me that he owed my family a favor. Yundong clicked his tongue, as expected of the top scholar at such a young age. He's indeed sinister. That's right. I've already given it away. One can't go back on my word and ask him to take it back, right? Liu Wei used to think that Qin Wenzheng was noble and magnanimous. When the court was in turmoil, he was a very far-sighted gentleman. As expected, he was still inexperienced. Yundong looked at him. Why can't I take it back? He accepted your brother to return the favor. If he accepts the roe deer, it's equivalent to not returning the favor. Let's go and ask him to take it back now. Liu Wei was stunned. This made a lot of sense. He really followed behind Yundong and returned to school. Shao Qingyuan gave his carriage to Liu An and quickly followed. The school was not far away. Yundong stood at the door and looked up at the signboard above his head. The corners of his mouth could not help but twitch. Indeed, talented people were willful. They didn't even give a name and just called it a school. The concierge knew Liu Wei. When he saw that Liu Wei had returned, he was a little surprised. He hurriedly went forward and asked, Young Master Liu, is there anything else? Liu Wei looked at Yundong and said hesitantly, I still have something to say. I'm here to look for Elder Brother Qin. Please inform him. The concierge nodded and quickly ran inside. Liu Wei thought about it and turned to Yundong. You want those 2 roe deers back because you want to send your brother to school, right? But do you think they will still accept your brother if you do that? Bringing them back and sending them over was no different from taking off your pants and farting. It would even leave a bad impression on Brother Qin. Yundong glanced at him. Was he stupid? Did he really think that she was trying to get the 2 roe deers back? She was just finding an excuse to enter the Qin family. When she saw Qin Wenzheng, she would definitely not mention the roe deers. Yundong did not speak. He just waited quietly. The Qin family was not very big, and there were not many servants. The gatekeeper found Qin Wenzheng's servant, and the servant went to the study. Master, young Master Liu is here again. As he spoke, he glanced at the things on Qin Wenzheng's table. It was an arrest warrant. On it was a portrait of a person. That person looked like a real person. It was said that Master had brought him back from the prefectural city. Chapter 135. Depending on the wanted list, Qin Wenzheng was only 26 years old this year, and he was indeed elegant. It was said that back then, the late emperor had hesitated for a long time about choosing him as the top scholar. After all, since ancient times, the top 3 candidates had won with their looks. At that time, the 3rd place was already in his 30s, and he was still a little inferior to this man in terms of looks. Later on, there was still an old minister who argued on the basis of reason. He felt that the scientific examination valued knowledge, and appearance was secondary. Moreover, an 18-year-old top scholar would bring glory to the country, especially it happened during the previous emperor's reign. It could be recorded in history. Perhaps the last sentence had touched the late emperor's heart. He waved his hand on the spot, and Qin Wenzheng became the top scholar, the most handsome top scholar in history. Now that a few years had passed, other than the fact that his aura had improved, his appearance had not changed much. Hearing the servant's words, he frowned slightly. He was a little unhappy that he was disturbed. Without looking up, he said that Madam and I are out. He wants to see us. After saying that, she lowered her head and looked at the wanted poster on the table. Beside the wanted poster was a piece of paper with a half-drawn picture on it. It was an imitation of the person on the wanted poster, and Qingyuan was holding a charcoal pen in his right hand. Upon hearing this, the servant turned around and ran out of the study. He did not expect to run into Qin Wenheng's wife, Madame Ge. Madame Ge walked in with a plate of pastries in her hand and smiled. "Why didn't I know I was going out?" Qin Wenheng raised his head and waved for the servant to leave quickly. He went over to take the pastries. "Why are you here? Aren't you riding with Ning'e?" She went to see the 2 roe deer. She was overjoyed to know that there would be wild animals for dinner. Madame Ge walked to his desk and saw the wanted poster. She then looked at the half-drawn map beside it. She laughed. "Master is indeed amazing. You've already learned how to draw like this." Qin Wenheng shook his head. "Not yet. I feel like something is missing." "Something was wrong. Isn't it good?" "They're very similar." Madame Ge looked at it carefully for a moment and felt that it was very lifelike. However, Qin Wenheng was very dissatisfied. He sat at the side and took a sip of tea. He said, "Prefecture Magistrate Dai is too petty. No matter how I asked him, he refused to tell me who drew this arrest warrant. He said that he promised that person not to leak any news about him." Madame Ge covered her mouth and laughed. "You are the one who taught me to keep my word." "Why? Do you want the prefecture magistrate to go back on his word now?" He didn't say anything because he wanted to protect the painter's identity so that he wouldn't be in danger. "I won't tell anyone. I just want to exchange painting skills with him." Qin Wenheng picked up the one he had drawn. He paused for a moment, then crumpled it into a ball and threw it away. Madame Ge could not stop him and looked at him helplessly. However, Qin Wenheng stood up. "No, won't have to go to the prefectural city. There are only so many painters in the prefectural city. They'll find them eventually." As he spoke, he left the study to call for the servant. The servant had just finished speaking to the concierge when he rushed back. At this moment, Yundong and the rest also saw the concierge who had just returned. "Master and Madam just went out." "Nonsense. You're the concierge. Wouldn't you know if they went out?" Liu Wei was dissatisfied. The concierge said helplessly, "They went out the back door. I couldn't see them either." Yundong pulled Liu Wei. "Forget it." It seemed like he didn't want to see her anymore. It would be too ugly and repulsive to argue at the door like this. Chapter 136. Someone is looking for you outside. The 3 of them returned to the carriage. Yundong then asked Liu Wei, "Where's your brother?" "Oh, he was brought back to the residence by the butler. He said that he had to prepare and would come to school tomorrow." Yundong raised his eyebrows. "Then he'll pretend to be your servant tomorrow and send your brother to school. How about that?" "How could he say no?" Yundong smiled. Shao Qingyuan nodded. "Good idea." Liu Wei suddenly turned to look at him. "What did Yundong say that made you feel bad? You're a man. Can't you have some opinions?" "It's settled then. Thank you." Yundong happily got into the carriage. Liu Wei sneered. "Have you asked for my opinion?" He walked angrily to Liu An's side. "Let's go back." They parted ways and never saw each other again. Shao Qingyuan also got into Yundong's carriage. He was the one who drove them back. When they were almost at the village entrance, it was Yundong. On the way, he talked about this trip into the mountains. Everything was going smoothly, and Shao Qingyuan's plan didn't go wrong. Liu Wei did indeed have some martial arts skills. Although he wasn't very strong, as long as he didn't encounter any big guys, it wouldn't be a problem. He was the one who got one of the roe deers, but he was too excited and overestimated himself. He did not listen to Shao Qingyuan when they encountered the tiger and was targeted by it. Shao Qingyuan had been injured to save him. Fortunately, he had the crossbow that Yundong had given him. The crossbow could be operated with one hand, and it was very fast. It was much more useful than ordinary bows. It was precisely because of this that the tiger skin could not be completely preserved. Although Yundong felt that it was a pity, human safety was naturally more important. He comforted him and quickly avoided the topic. Not long after, the carriage entered Yongfu village. When she arrived at the Zhou family's house, she found that Dong Xiulan had already brought Madame Yang and Zheng Yu to clean up the wild animals in the courtyard. Gu Yundong's eyes lit up. Although there are no roe deers, it's not bad to have wild chickens and rabbits. You like to eat roe deer meat? Shao Qingyuan asked. Not really. I just haven't eaten it before. Shao Qingyuan nodded thoughtfully. After driving the carriage to the Zheng family, he returned. Gu Yundong went to his homestead to take a look. He did not expect Feng Daneng and the rest to surround him. Yundong, I heard that Shao Qingyuan hid a big worm. Is that true? Shao Qingyuan and Lu Wei had brought the tiger back from the back door of the Shao family and gotten into the carriage. They were at the foot of the mountain, so almost no one saw them. No one knew who spread it, but no one believed it. A big tiger. That was a big tiger. Could it be easily caught? Gu Yundong nodded firmly. It's true. What about the big tiger? He was taken away by young Master Liu. Everyone was very disappointed. They still wanted to see it. They had been excited for the entire afternoon, but who knew that they still didn't have a chance? Gu Yundong went home to help cook dinner after visiting the homestead. Unexpectedly, as soon as she reached the kitchen, she found Miss Gu Yunke sleeping on the table with her head tilted. In front of her was pear candy. Oh no, she had forgotten about this. When the little girl heard the sound, she opened her eyes and looked at her pitifully. Big sister, can I eat it? She had been waiting for an entire afternoon. Gu Yundong coughed lightly and quickly nodded. Sure, sure. The little girl immediately cheered. They'll go call brother and the others. She was a good child and had to tell her friends if she had food. Gu Yundong laughed and shook her head. She took out the candies. After a while, the young lady came in. Big sister, someone is looking for you outside. Chapter 137. Good farmer Gu Yundong put down the candy in his hand, wiped his hands, and left. He was standing in the courtyard with a basket in her hand. She looked very uneasy. When she saw Gu Yundong come out, Dong Xiulan hurriedly went forward and asked, Sister-in-law sure said that she would give you oranges. I know. One saw her in the city before and told her. Aunt, please pour me a glass of water. Dong Xiulan nodded. All right, there's still ginger tea that I made for the homestead. He'll bring it over. Gu Yundong thanked him and led He Yi to the central room. Aunt, have you sold out the basket of oranges? He Yi quickly nodded. I sold them all. I met a tea house buyer and saw that the oranges were fresh, so I bought them all. My boss specially picked these and brought them back. Can you take a look? She placed the basket on the table and opened the cloth, revealing more than 10 round and refreshing oranges. Gu Yundong liked it at a glance. He felt a little uncomfortable when she asked him to sit, so he sat on half of her, but, Auntie, calculate how much it is. He'll pay. He was silent for a moment before saying softly, one copper coin each. Gu Yundong frowned. The pears he bought last time were also 1 copper coin each, but the quality of the pears was not good and they were not very fresh. They could not compare to this orange at all. The price was obviously lower. Auntie, let's go with the market price. If you give me such a cheap price, others will say that I bullied an honest person. At this moment, Dong Xiulan came over with ginger tea. She handed it to He Yi and said with a smile, The Sure family planted oranges well. Last time, a foreign merchant passed by the village and saw it. He bought it for 10 copper coins a catty. 10 copper coins per catty. In this era, a catty was 16 taels. The Sure family's oranges were big and watery. Almost 4 of them would be a catty. This was only what she had bought in the village. It might be more than that if she sold the orange at the market. Gu Yundong knew what to do and took out 60 copper coins. Auntie, keep it. When He saw this, she quickly refused. That's too much, that's too much. Yes, 50 copper coins is the money I paid for the 20 oranges. The other 10 copper coins are compensation for knocking over your basket. When He heard this, she did not dare to take the money anymore. It's not damaged. Why would one want compensation? Gu Yundong had a headache. It was not good to be too polite. Dong Xiulan had been with her for a while and more or less understood her personality, so she pulled He Yi aside to persuade her. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief. In the end, he accepted the 60 copper coins and thanked Gu Yundong again and again before leaving the Zhou family. Her son is a hooligan. After suffering again, they didn't make it. His parents had both passed away, and the fruit forest had not been saved. His family was in a mess, and Dajiang had collapsed. His vitality seemed to have been forcefully sucked away, just like that. At that time, Zhuangzi had just been born. Before his parents died, they reminded him not to resist. Their family had no background or backing, and those relatives did not dare to help them offend the landlord and village chief. For this family, and for the newborn Zhuangzi, they should tolerate it if they could. They would retreat if they could and try not to become enemies with others. Since then, Dajiang and his wife's temperament had changed drastically. They did not argue with the landlord again. From then on, they did not walk around outside much and mostly stayed at home. As for Zhuangzi, he became more and more rebellious because he was dissatisfied with his parents. Especially after he discovered that after hanging out with Liang, those people who bullied his family did not dare to cause trouble again. It was as if he had found a way to survive and became even more uncontrollable. Gu Yundong could not help but sigh. It was no wonder that his parents had passed away. What about the landlord? Chapter 139. Confrontation. When Gu Yundong came out of the village chief's house, the sky was already slightly dark. She was not in a hurry. She walked slowly along the village path. She had been in Yongfu village for so long, but she had never felt the peace of Yongfu village at such a time. The sound of children crying could be heard from this house, and the sound of husband and wife quarreling could be heard from that house. It was lively, as if all kinds of life flashed past her eyes. She should be glad that she came to Yongfu village at the right time and met Qin Liang as the village chief. The former village chief was said to have drunken alcohol one night and had not found his home after leaving. He had frozen to death outside on a snowy day. Everyone said that he had done too many bad things and received retribution. The landlord didn't have a good ending either. A few years ago, Fengkai County had the current county magistrate. The landlord did something evil and bumped into the county magistrate. His house was confiscated, and the landlord was beheaded. His family was exiled. Unfortunately, the Sure couple's temperament had already been set. Even if the two mountains that suppressed them were gone, they would not be able to turn around. However, Qin Liang was right. This did not stop her from asking them for help. Gu Yundong's mood improved. She could not help but smile when she walked into the Zhou residence, until she saw the children confronting each other in the courtyard. On the left were Gu Yunshu, Niu Dan, the three Zhou siblings, and Madame Yang. On the right was Gu Yunke. But why did Gu Yundong feel that Gu Yunke, who was alone, was more imposing? The children did not see Gu Yundong enter. They were all holding lollipops, while Gu Yunke had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, a whole bunch of them. In terms of the number of lollipops, she was more imposing than the few people opposite her combined. Kiki, you're being too unfair. We each have 1, and you have so many, Gu Yunshu said angrily. Gu Yunke immediately put her hands behind her back and hid the lollipop in her hand. However, in this way, a few candies fell out of the front pocket of her clothes. The little girl was stunned and hurriedly stuffed the lollipops into her pocket. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. She had asked Madame Yang to sew this pocket for her. Occasionally, this girl would take some peanuts and chestnuts and put them in the pocket to eat slowly. The lollipop was wrapped in oil paper, so it would not stick to the pocket. After stuffing the lollipop into the front pocket, the little girl realized that the lollipops in the two sides of her pants had fallen out again. She was so anxious that she was sweating profusely. In the end, she simply pulled off the hat on her head, put the lollipop inside, closed it, and hid it behind her back. Then, she raised her head. Her hair was bouncing because she had lost her hat. Look, I didn't. Gu Yunshu was furious. It's in your hat. Hiding the candy in front of everyone. Did she think they were all blind? The little girl shook her head vigorously. One said no, so I didn't. Kiki, give each of us another one. You can have a rest, okay? Dan coaxed her. He had licked the lollipop just now. It was simply too delicious. He felt like he was about to ascend to heaven. It was much, much better than sweets. He couldn't bear to eat another bite. Yundong shook his head. He walked behind Yunke and took the hat from her hand. The little girl was stunned and hurriedly turned around. When she saw that it was her eldest sister, she immediately pouted and looked at her pitifully. One didn't. That aggrieved expression, as if tears were about to fall the next moment. Chapter 140. Nice, delicious, not greasy Yundong could not take it anymore. She quickly took one out of her hat and gave it to her. You can't eat too much sugar, or your teeth will rot. In the future, you won't be able to eat braised pork, rabbit meat, or chicken. The little girl swallowed her saliva and looked at the lollipop eagerly. She couldn't finish the rest of the sentence. Yundong smiled. How about this? I'll keep the candy for now. I'll give you one a day, okay? As she spoke, she looked at the other children. You too. You can't eat too much sugar. In the future, take one every day to develop a habit. Otherwise, if I make all kinds of sugar in the future, you won't be able to keep your teeth. Yunche's eyes lit up. Eldest sister wants to make all kinds of sugar. Dan and the others' focus was on another thing. Can we eat candy every day? This was a very extravagant thing. Sugar was very precious. Dan family rarely bought it. Even if they did, they could only eat it during the New Year and festival. It was usually hidden well. Yundong nodded. I just made this candy. Try it and see if it tastes good. They'll try another type of candy tomorrow. Only then did the children start to carefully eat the beautiful and cute lollipop in front of them. Yundong had made several molds before. They were all simple ones. Some were square, some were round, some were heart-shaped, and some were pentagrams. There were almost all of them, and they looked very likable. In fact, if she really started, she could even make models of various small animals. Yes, it's delicious. It's sweet and fragrant. It tastes like pears. Shu was the first to speak. His eyes were shining. Dan also nodded vigorously. Previously, he had licked it for the first time and didn't think about it carefully. This time, after eating it, he was so excited that his body was trembling. Sister Yundong, did you really make this? It's even better than what I used to eat. This isn't greasy at all, and it doesn't stick to my teeth. Zhou also said, Sister Yundong, if we sell this, it will definitely be sold out in an instant. This was what Yundong wanted. Do you all think so? It's good-looking, delicious, and not greasy. Jia was the oldest among the children. Zhou, who had always been taken care of next door, was also quiet. It was rare for him to express his opinion. As for the two youngest and oldest, Zhou, Yunke, and Madame Yang, they could not be bothered to speak. They ate happily. Yundong was in a good mood. She took out a few more lollipops and handed them to Shu. Take them to the next room for your Uncle Zhou and Brother Shao. Go. Then, she gave one to Madame Dong and ate the other. Yunke looked on helplessly as she ate. Her gaze was extremely pitiful. Yundong was amused by her. Don't worry, there will definitely be one a day. If you perform well, eldest sister will reward you with one more. With that, she went into the kitchen. Because the sweets she made had received the unanimous approval of Shao, Qingyuan, and the others, Yundong became confident about what she had to do next. At night, she lay in bed and thought about her future development. When she earned money, it would be much simpler to look for Dajiang or treat Madame Yang. The next morning, Yundong put on the carriage and went out. Unexpectedly, when she left the courtyard, she saw that Shao Qingyan was already waiting there. Young master, Liu hasn't given me the money. 111 go to the county city too. This is a big deal. Come up then. The two of them went to the Liu residence together. Unexpectedly, when they reached the entrance, Liu Wei was already waiting outside. Chapter 141. 20 Catties. First, Liu Wei had a gloating smile on his face. Yundong's heart skipped a beat, and she had a bad feeling. Sure enough, As soon as she stepped forward, she heard his sly voice. "Want to have bad news for you. Do you want to hear it?" Yundong clenched her fists. Could she go up and beat him up? Before she could answer, Liu Wei couldn't help but say, "Half an hour ago, a servant from the Qin family came over and said that Brother Qin and his wife had gone out and would only be back in a few days. He left my brother some homework and asked him to finish it at home. So your plan to go to school is ruined." Liu Wei felt that his grievances from yesterday were finally swept away. Yundong could not hold it in any longer. She stepped on his foot and turned to leave. Ouch! Liu Wei cried so loudly that even Liu An couldn't bear to look at him. "Young master, you're the eldest young master of the Liu family. Can you take note of your status? How can you feel so accomplished bullying a 13-year-old girl?" Before Liu Wei could stop shouting, Qingyuan was already standing in front of him. "Give me the silver." Liu Wei almost spat out a mouthful of blood. This was his sworn brother who would live and die with him. This was simply heartless and unreasonable. He asked Liu An to give him the banknotes. Then, he snorted and decided to cut ties with him. Unexpectedly, Qingyuan took the banknotes and followed Yundong. Liu Wei, Yundong walked for a long distance before slowing down. Qingyuan's legs were long, so it didn't take long for him to catch up. Seeing that she didn't seem to be in a good mood, he opened his mouth and said after a while, "Actually, there are other schools in the county city. You can look at other schools." Yundong sighed. "I already know the best one. Why would one be willing to settle for something else? Not to mention anything else, just from the fact that the Liu family spared no effort to send the child over, it could be seen that this was a rare teacher. To be able to become the top scholar at the age of 18, he must be at least more knowledgeable than the other teachers in the county." When the court was in turmoil, his courage to retreat meant that he was not pedantic but flexible. He remembered the Liu family's favor, which showed that he was grateful. If he did not look at their family background to take in students, it was obvious that he would not be greedy, lecherous, and trample on others. In addition, he was young and knew how to scheme against Liu Wei. Yundong was very satisfied. Forget it. He'll come back eventually. Anyway, Yunshu is still young. There's no hurry. Yundong decided to come back after Qin Zhou returned to the county. "By the way, do you know where the largest grocery store in the county is?" "I want to buy some sugar." She wanted to try orange-flavored candy. "He'll take you there." The largest grocery store in the county was also on East Street. It was not far away. When Yundong entered, the grocery store was quite lively. The waiter greeted the other customers. Yundong looked around and frowned slightly. Seeing that she didn't buy anything after walking around and even looked a little unhappy, the shopkeeper walked over and asked, "Miss, what do you want to buy?" "Our shop is the largest grocery store in Fengkai County. You can buy anything you want." "I want to buy white sugar." She looked around but couldn't find it. The shopkeeper was stunned. He looked at her from head to toe. Judging from her clothes, she was also from the countryside. How could she afford white sugar? "Miss, this white sugar is not cheap. How much do you want?" "Let's start with 20 catties." The shopkeeper glared at her. Even the waiter and customers beside her turned their heads in surprise when they heard this. "How much do you want?" Chapter 142. Can you afford it? 20 catties, Yundong repeated. She didn't know what they were trying to do with their expressions. The shopkeeper frowned. "Miss, you're here to cause trouble, right? 20 catties? Do you know how much it costs?" "How much?" "One tael of white sugar for 25 copper coins." The shopkeeper sneered. "Can you afford it? You asked for 20 catties so easily." Yundong knew that white sugar and brown sugar were quite expensive. She had bought sweets on the streets for the two children as snacks. The sweets were slightly cheaper. Previously, in the prefectural city of Xian'er Prefecture, she had forgotten to buy white sugar when she went to the grocery store to buy oil, salt, rice, and noodles. It was only when she returned to Aunt Kess's house to take out some things that she remembered. At that time, she wanted to buy it. Aunt Kess said that sugar was expensive and she wouldn't need much anyway. They had it at home, so she could use it at home. Yundong did not refuse. However, the white sugar Aunt Kess took out was not pure white sugar. It was just brighter than black sugar. However, she only used it as seasoning when cooking braised pork. She rarely used it for other purposes. Later on, when she came to Yongfu village, she never thought of buying candy, mainly because it was inconvenient. She had forgotten about it a few times when she went to the county city in town. Therefore, when she needed candy, she could only take it from her space when Madame Dong was not paying attention. Fortunately, Madame Dong did not know what she had brought with her when she came from the prefectural city. She was not as sharp as Aunt Ko. She had specially come over to buy it today. She did not expect it to be so difficult to buy 20 catties of white sugar, and it was so expensive. But hearing the shopkeeper's words, Yundong was unhappy. Why do you care if I can afford it? Do you have it in your provision store? If not, they'll buy it elsewhere. The shopkeeper snorted and asked the waiter to go to the warehouse at the back to get it. He walked to the counter and began to calculate. 1 tael for 25 copper coins. 20 catties costs 8 taels of silver. Miss, have you brought enough silver? Yes. Yundong did not want to say anything more, but the other customers in the shop watched her and started discussing quietly. This girl is quite bold. She actually wants to buy 20 catties of white sugar. She's really generous. Don't tell me she's pretending. Look at the clothes she's wearing. One look, and you can tell that she's from the countryside. It's good enough that she has 8 copper coins on her. 8 taels of silver. Let's see what you say later. Hence, the few people who had bought the goods stopped walking and looked at Yundong. Shao Qingyuan stood at the door and did not go in. He did not know what was going on inside. He only saw that Yundong had not come out in a long time. She looked inside. Seeing that she was fine, he turned back. The waiter quickly brought out a large bag of sugar and placed it in front of Yundong. He said arrogantly, "Here, it's all here. Do you want me to wait for you?" Yundong opened the bag and looked down. Her expression immediately became complicated. This was also considered white sugar. Shopkeeper, one want that kind of very white sugar. It's like white clouds. Isn't this too black? The shopkeeper suddenly walked out from behind the counter, closed the bag, and put it behind him. What nonsense are you talking about? And very white sugar. Let me tell you, this is the best we have. Are you buying it or not? If not, get lost. He was about to spit out saliva. You're here to cause trouble because our shop's business is good, right? I knew it. You look poor and keep saying that you want to buy 20 catties of white sugar. You've never seen the world, so you're spouting nonsense here. If you have the ability, find me white sugar like white clouds. If you find it, they'll buy it back at 10 times the price. With that, he pushed Yundong. Shao Qingyuan rushed forward and grabbed his hand. He looked at him coldly. Yundong was also annoyed. You're the one who hasn't seen the world. I'll make some for you to see. Don't forget what you said when the time comes. As soon as Liu Wei arrived, he heard her last sentence. Chapter 143. Make it yourself. Plan it yourself. The shopkeeper was a little afraid of being beaten up by Shao Qingyuan. He did not dare to look him in the eye and could only say to Yundong, "All right, go and try making some. You stinky girl who doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth." When Shao Qingyuan exerted force, the shopkeeper immediately did not dare to speak. Liu Wei knew that this provision store belonged to the Tao family in the county city. Yundong and Shao Qingyuan would be at a disadvantage if this matter blew up. He quickly took 2 steps forward and glared at the shopkeeper. "You snob. Let's go. We won't buy it here." With that, he pulled Yundong and Shao Qingyuan out of the provision store. As soon as they left, the others in the shop suddenly woke up. After a moment of silence, they burst into laughter in the next moment. That little girl really dares to brag. Is there something wrong with her brain? I think she's talking nonsense. If she had that ability, would she still be dressed like that? She definitely can't take out 8 taels of silver and is deliberately looking for a way out. That was young Master Liu just now, right? Young Master Liu is getting more and more unreasonable. What kind of friends does he have? Forget about that girl. The man beside her also looks fierce. The shop assistant beside him rolled his eyes and whispered into the shopkeeper's ear, "Didn't our young master lose to young Master Liu in polo last time, and throw a big tantrum at home? Can we use this matter to vent our anger this time? The shopkeeper's eyes lit up. Kid, you're the smartest. Take good care of the shop. He'll go out for a while. Yundong and the other two gradually walked away, but the conversation still drifted into their ears. Liu Wei frowned. Girl, you'll be struck by lightning if you talk big. Who's talking big? Yundong glared at him. Liu Wei sneered. One heard you say that you can make sugar that's even whiter than that in the grocery store. If you don't believe me, let's make a bet. Yundong stopped in her tracks. If I succeed, you have to do something for me. All right, Liu Wei agreed readily. In any case, he didn't believe her. He was just coaxing the little girl to play. Yundong turned to look at Qingyuan, who instantly reacted. He'll testify. Then let's go home and get ready. Yundong suddenly became energetic. All right, if there was no sugar, she would make it herself. If there were no fruits, she would grow them herself. When Yundong returned to Yongfu village, she asked Dong Xiulan who planted sugarcane. Coincidentally, the Shi family had it. However, it wasn't a lot. When Shao Qingyuan heard this, he bought a large batch from other places. Yundong was surprised, but she was very happy. Chapter 144. House constructed Yundong could not understand their attitude, but she still tried her best to be friendly and tell them about his plan to buy sugarcane. When the Shi couple heard this, they secretly heaved a sigh of relief and asked her how much she wanted. Yundong had already seen the quantity of sugarcane in their house. It was not much. Therefore, sell them all to me if you can. The Shi couple was surprised, but it was naturally good that they could sell all the sugarcane. This was much easier than them painstakingly dragging the sugarcane to town or county to sell. Yundong still paid the market price. After paying, the Shi couple quickly harvested all the sugarcane and sent it to her. Looking at the courtyard filled with sugarcane, Madame Dong was a little stunned. When Yundong said that she wanted to make sugar, she was even more shocked. However, she could not say anything. While she was surprised, she still diligently helped her. Yundong knew how to refine sugar. During her internship in university, she had competed for the position of a television host assistant with her ability. The host was in charge of the program to search for some heritage skills that were about to disappear. Yundong worked hard by her side. The host found it tiring, and Yundong had helped her with her homework. Among them was the method of making sugar. She had personally made it with the craftsman and would ask questions if she didn't understand. Unfortunately, she had only tried it twice at most and wasn't considered familiar with it. Back then, she would record these steps in her notebook. Unfortunately, after the apocalypse, she did not have the time to bring that notebook out. However, she still remembered the general method. The problem now was to experiment. She had to get familiar with the process and perfect it bit by bit. She knew that people nowadays would add a kind of tree ash to refine the white sugar in the process of making sugar. But the kind given by the shopkeeper was definitely not refined like this. Perhaps the white sugar refined after adding tree ash could only be seen in those rich families. Yundong had learned the yellow water method of making sugar. She knew that this was a method that appeared during the Ming Dynasty. This world was different from the history she had learned before. This should not be considered changing history. This method was to simmer the sugarcane after squeezing the juice. First, they would make black sugar according to the conventional method. Then, they would put the black sugar into a tile funnel to form a lump. Then, they would pour the yellow mud water into the funnel to produce a reaction. Then, they would obtain white sugar. Yundong brought everything she needed to the Zhou family's backyard. Chapter 145. Yundong, why are you here? Yundong was still in a daze. The beam would be installed? She had not been to her house for the past few days. She did not know what was going on. She quickly put down the work in her hands, packed up, changed her clothes, and walked towards the homestead. Yundong's eyes lit up as she looked at the refreshing green brick house in front of him. Finally, she had her own house. Feng Danning was also very excited. This was the most proud house he had built. He followed Gu Yundong inside. As he looked, he said, "The beam will be up the day after tomorrow. This furniture might take another 2 days to be pulled over. This is the cellar you wanted. The well in the backyard has been dug. This house is really good." Feng Danning sighed. Gu Yundong looked around and was very satisfied. She would tell Madame Dong about the treat later. The beam installation here required a party. However, there were not many people in the village that the Gu family were familiar with. It was impossible for her to treat the entire village to a banquet. After some rough calculations, she realized that Shao Qingyuan, the Zhou family, the village chief's family, the Feng family, and the 6th great-grandfather were on good terms with her. There were also the workers who helped build the house. There were also 2 or 3 tables with their families. Yes, there was also the Shi family. Liu Wei would also be invited. Oh yes, there were also Gu Yunshu and Gu Yong's playmates. These 2 little fellows actually had friends, although there were only 2 or 3 of them. After drawing up the name list, Gu Yundong began to prepare. There were many things that she did not know. It was Madame Dong who told her what to buy and how to prepare steamed buns and peanuts. Madame Zhou and her daughter-in-law, Madame Song, also came over. Feng Danning's wife also said that she would help cook on the day of celebration. Gu Yundong was very grateful to them and was generous. On the day when the sun rose, Gu Yundong was woken up by Madame Dong. She brought Madame Yang and the other 2 to the entrance of her house and saw more than half of the villagers gathered there. Madame Zhou came over to call her. "Yundong, quick, firecrackers are going off." Gu Yundong asked Gu Yunshu to light the firecrackers. The moment the firecrackers sounded, Feng Danning and the others also shouted, "The beam is up!" Gu Yundong threw out all the peanuts, cinnamon, and round steamed buns in her hand, mixed with copper coins. All the men, women, old, and young present pounced over excitedly to snatch it. Those who managed to snatch the copper coins were screaming and shouting. Gu Yunshu and Gu Yunke were completely awake and were playing with each other. Chapter 146. Gu Xian'er's request. The voice was almost shrill. Everyone present heard it and looked at the girl who spoke in surprise. Gu Yundong also looked at her. It took her a while to find out this person's identity from her memories. Oh, it was Gu Xian'er, second Uncle Gu Da's daughter, the cousin who specialized in bullying them. Back then, Gu Dajiang got married relatively late, so Gu Yundong was only 4 months older than her cousin. Gu Yundong was very dissatisfied with this King life. She wanted to meet Gu Dajiang, but she couldn't. Now, she actually met this person who she didn't even want to look at. The mammy of the Peng family also looked at Gu Xian'er in surprise. The latter had already taken a few steps forward and grabbed Gu Yundong's hand. "Why are you here? You're not dead?" "Uffed. You're the one who should be dead." She was the one who wanted to ask why Gu Xian'er was here. Enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. "This is my home. If I'm not here, where am I?" Gu Xian'er was stunned. Her home? That's right. Previously, Granny Qian had said that the owner of the house that they had come to give gifts was surnamed Gu. At that time, she had thought that they really had the same surname, but different lives. Especially when she saw this green brick-tiled house at the door, she wished that she was the owner surnamed Gu. Unexpectedly, this person was Gu Yundong. How is this possible? Gu Yundong looked around and realized that everyone was looking at them. She did not want to become a topic of discussion, especially today, which was a good day for her house to be completed. It was too unlucky to be destroyed by an unknown person. Hence, she glanced at Gu Xian'er and said, "Follow me." Gu Xian'er was full of questions, so she quickly followed her. Madame Zhou was also in the hall. Although she did not know what had happened, she was the village chief's wife, after all. She quickly went forward to greet Nanny Qian and the others. "Everyone, take a seat. Let's eat some melon seeds and talk. There's brown sugar water here. It's very sweet. Don't be polite. Everyone, take a seat." Brown sugar water? This was good stuff. The Gu family was actually treating guests with this. Wasn't this too generous? Of course, these brown sugars were the products of Gu Yundong's experiments before she refined white sugar. Everyone's attention was immediately attracted by the brown sugar water. Only a few people looked at Gu Yundong. Gu Yundong brought her to a room inside. Along the way, Xian'er took in the scenery of the Gu family. Although the house had not been completely decorated, just by looking at the prototype that had been built, it was enough to imagine how blissful it would be to stay in such a home. At least, it was much better than the old Gu family in the past. Xian'er was overjoyed. She did not expect Gu Yundong to be so lucky. Not only did she survive the famine, but she also built such a huge house. Xian'er was glad that she had followed Granny Qian here today. After closing the door of the room, Gu Yundong saw that she was still looking left and right, her eyes shining. She did not need to think to know what this woman was thinking. Why are you here? How did you become a servant of the Peng family? Xian'er finally came back to her senses. When she heard the word servant, she was a little unhappy. It's all because of those two old farts. They were instigated by third uncle's family and actually sold me to a human broker with a bag of sweet potatoes. I was brought to Fengkai County by the human broker. Then, as if she had thought of something, her eyes suddenly lit up and she said, "You must have a lot of money to build such a good house. Hurry up and go to the Peng residence to redeem me." Chapter 147. Bullying the weak and fearing the hard, huh? Gu Yundong almost laughed out loud at her words. Redeemer? It would be good enough if she did not force her to be a servant girl in the Peng residence. Redeemer? However, Xian'er did not see her expression. She looked up at the room that was twice as big as the one she used to have in the Gu family and said excitedly, "This room is not bad. Let me stay in it in the future. When the time comes, I want a big carved bed and a dressing table. There have to be a few cabinets over there. All right, there are also vases. Rich families have to put vases in their rooms. That's how the Peng family is." She had already planned to get Gu Yundong to buy her a few silk flowers and cut a few pieces of cloth with a better color to make clothes. Living in such a house and wearing new clothes, wasn't she like a young lady? Xian'er. Gu Yundong interrupted her thoughts and asked with a sneer, "How long have you been a servant in the Peng manor? Why are you asking this?" "It's been less than 2 months," she replied impatiently. Less than 2 months. It seemed that she came to Yongfu village a little earlier. Gu Yundong nodded. "That's not a short period of time. Why? Have you not learned how to bend your knees after being a servant for nearly 2 months? Xian'er was stunned. What do you mean? Where did a servant get the confidence to order people around in my house? Gu Yundong, how dare you talk to me like that? In the past, Gu Yundong did not dare to refute her at all. Even if she was scolded or beaten by her, she would only cry and hide. Now she was so bold. Why wouldn't I dare? This is my house. Are you out of your mind to stand on my territory and order me around? Gu Yundong looked at her as if she was looking at a fool. You're the problem. You're really bold. Aren't you afraid that What's there to be afraid of? Are you afraid that you'll complain? Go, go, go. Go find a grandpa and grandma who sold you. Go find your lazy parents. Gu Yundong began to roll up her sleeves. Or are you afraid that it'll hit you? Come, let's see whose fist is stronger. Xian'er was horrified. Gu Yundong had really changed. She was no longer afraid of her and even dared to hit her. No, she must have seen that she had no backing. Her grandparents were not around, so she was the king. Seeing Gu Yundong like this, Xian'er was still a little afraid. She could not help but take a step back. She braced herself and said, Aren't you afraid that he'll go out and shout at others, saying that you don't care about your cousin's life and death, that you have a cousin who is a servant in someone else's house, and you want to save her? Gu Yundong did not care. Go. Let's see what the nanny who brought you here will think when she hears your words. Chapter 148. Your sister Gu, Xian'er, gritted her teeth. Are you really not afraid that others will say that you have a servant cousin? Aren't you afraid that the villagers will point fingers at you? I'm not the one who sold you. What am I afraid of? The Gao family in this village has a daughter who went to the prefectural city to be a servant girl. The Gao family still feels proud. Do you want to work hard and be a first-grade servant girl later so that I can bask in the glory? If Xian'er realized that not only had Yundong become bolder, but even her words were harsh. She did not want to be a servant at all. She had to wake up at a fixed time every day and wash clothes after sweeping the courtyard. Anyone could order her around. She was so busy every day that she did not have any time to rest. She also wanted to live in a big house and wear new clothes. She had seen that the material of Yundong's clothes today was very good. Xian'er knew when to yield and when to stand tall. At the thought of this, she knelt down with a thud. Her tears came as she said, "Sister, you're my elder sister. Please help me. I really can't stay in the Peng residence anymore. I have endless work to do every day, and I still have to be beaten and scolded. The only family I have here is you. We have the same blood flowing in our bodies. Moreover, we've also left our hometown and met here. This is God telling us sisters to take care of each other and support each other." She said sincerely and tearfully, "Big sister, I'm your sister." Yundong took a few steps back and opened the door of the room. As he walked out, he said, "I want to ask that Nanny Qian how the Peng family bullied you. Look at how terribly you're crying." Xian'er immediately stood up without another word. She wiped her tears and walked out before Yundong. Then, she turned around fiercely. "Yundong, you win. Just you wait. I won't let you have it easy." Yundong crossed her arms and looked at her coldly. Xian'er had already tidied up her clothes and went to Nanny Qian. When the surrounding guests saw her coming out, they all looked in her direction. They were curious about who this person was. She seemed to know the Gu girl. Was she someone from her hometown before the Gu girl fled? They wanted to ask, but she had already returned to Granny Qian's side. They still kept a certain distance from these people who had come from the Peng residence. However, they could not suppress the flames of gossip in their hearts. All of them wanted to ask the rest of the Gu family. They did not dare to ask Yundong. With Madame Yang helping in the kitchen, there were only 2 children left. Someone stopped Yunshu and asked him in a low voice, "Who was the maid from the Peng residence to you?" Yunshu had always been worried. Chapter 149. Have to guard against Xian'er was slightly stunned. She lowered her head and wiped the corners of her eyes. Then, she nodded and said softly, "Yes, that's my cousin." Nanny Qian was stunned and shocked. "Your cousin? Then Granny probably doesn't know that we fled here because of the famine in Yongning Prefecture. My cousin's family was chased out by my grandparents long ago. I was sold to human traffickers by my grandparents before I came to Peng Manor. I always thought that my cousin and the others were long gone. After all, my grandparents only gave him a few potatoes back then. Eldest aunt is a fool, and my cousin has 2 young siblings. Eldest uncle has also disappeared." Nanny Qian really did not know Xian'er's background. After all, she had only casually called a servant girl to carry things. And her cousin. Nanny Qian looked at the imposing green brick house in front of her and frowned slightly. Xian'er sighed slightly and continued, "I was too shocked and excited to see cousin just now, so I couldn't help but say a few more words. I thought I would never see the Gu family again in my life. I didn't expect cousin to not only live well, but also have the money to build such a good house and even know young Master Peng. She's too capable." Nanny Qian's eyes narrowed slightly. She was young Madame's trusted subordinate. Today, Madame wanted her to find out who the Gu family was. Why would young Master ask them to send a gift over for no reason? When did he get to know such a country bumpkin? The problem was that this gift was personally prepared by the young Master. It was not cheap. She glanced at Xian'er and asked with narrowed eyes, "Then did your cousin tell you how she met the young Master of our residence?" The person who had fled here had only arrived not long ago. There was no reason for young Master to know her. Xian'er shook her head. "I asked, but my cousin refused to tell me. She only told me to work hard in the Peng Manor." Nanny Qian stopped talking and lowered her head slightly to take a sip of brown sugar water. Where did this little girl from the Gu family get so much money? Nanny Qian had met Liu Wei, but she had also asked around just now. It seemed that young Master Liu had just arrived at Yongfu village not long ago. Moreover, he had asked a hunter surnamed Shao to bring him into the mountains for hunting. He only got to know the little girl because the little girl from the Gu family lived next door to the Shao family. In addition, the Gu family was the only family in the village who had a carriage. Young Master Liu borrowed her family's carriage. With such a close relationship, the Gu family actually invited him over. After staying in a rich family for a long time, Nanny Qian's thoughts became more complicated. She felt that this girl from the Gu family was really good at climbing up the ladder. The capable Gu Yundong stood in the room and could not help but laugh at the two worried children. Do you think she can still bully eldest sister now? Eldest sister will fight back. Gu Yunshu thought about it. Yes, eldest sister is not easy to bully now. Then they were relieved. All right, you don't have to worry about eldest sister. If you're really worried, go and protect mother. Gu Yundong patted their heads. When the two little guys heard this, it was as if they had received an important mission. They nodded very seriously and rushed to the Zhou family. The new house could not be used yet. They could only do the cooking at the Zhou family's house for the time being. The two of them left, but Gu Yundong narrowed her eyes and looked in the direction of the front yard. Gu Xian'er wasn't someone who would give up easily. She had to be careful. Chapter 150. Let the country bumpkins broaden their horizons. Gu Yundong was pondering when Shao Qingyuan arrived. He saw that she had not come out for a long time and was a little worried, so he came to take a look. Gu Yundong's eyes lit up when she saw him. Shao Qingyuan, do me a favor. Tell me, that Gu Xian'er, the woman who just came with me, is my cousin. Help me keep an eye on her today and see what she has done. Shao Qingyuan agreed without another word. Okay. Then, he walked towards the front courtyard. However, he had only taken 2 steps when Gu Yundong stopped him. Hey, wait, forget it. Your presence is too strong. It's too easy to be discovered if you keep an eye on her. Shao Qingyuan took 2 steps back and said, Don't worry, I won't be discovered. You have to trust me. Gu Yundong was stunned. When she met his sincere gaze, she nodded inexplicably. Shao Qingyuan suddenly laughed and left. Gu Yundong stood silently on the spot. She actually felt that Shao Qingyuan was so handsome, she suddenly slapped her face and came back to her senses. What kind of situation was this? Why was she still infatuated? Gu Yundong composed herself and strode towards the front yard. The villagers greeted her one after another. Gu Yundong smiled and replied, ignoring the curious eyes of the gossipy crowd. She still walked up to Granny Qian and went to talk to Gu Xian'er directly. She did not have the time to greet her. Nanny Qian's congratulatory gift had yet to be sent over. Logically speaking, she could have directly handed it to Madame Zhou, who was entertaining the guests at that time. However, she was from the Peng family and represented the master of the Peng family. She was also the richest and most powerful person present besides Liu Wei. She thought that she was superior. Compared to the villagers who only gave fruits, vegetables, eggs, and so on, the gifts they gave were much more valuable. Therefore, she naturally had to broaden the horizons of these people who had never seen the world. Nanny Qian reached back, and another maidservant placed the things on the table one by one. Nanny Qian smiled and said, This is a congratulatory gift from my young madam to the Gu family. I hope Miss Gu doesn't mind. The people present couldn't help but look over. There was a fruit box with all kinds of famous pastries in the city. A calligraphy painting which, according to Granny Qian, was written by a famous calligrapher from the previous dynasty. There was a screen with embroidery of the 8 spirits of the Golden Age on it. Also cloth. The Peng family was the largest cloth merchant in Fengkai County. This was the most practical gift. Gu Yundong did not expect the Peng family to be so generous. Peng Zhongfei, was he really frightened? Not to mention anything else, just that calligraphy painting and that ornament were not easy to obtain. Liu Wei was also shocked. He thought of the gift he had given out previously and quietly pulled Liu An over. Later, add another 20 taels of silver as a gift. Liu An widened his eyes. Young master, you're too prodigal. Although he liked the Gu family was in the countryside after all. If he gave them too much, it would make them feel uneasy. If Gu Yundong knew what Liu An was thinking, she would definitely kick him aside. What was there to be uneasy about? The more, the better. She could even smile in her dreams at night. Okay? Did she look like someone who had never seen the world? Nanny Qin smiled and asked, Miss Gu, do you like them? She wanted to see Gu Yundong's flattered expression, but the latter nodded and calmly took the items. This is a token of your young madam's appreciation. Of course I like it. Chapter 151. Banquet. Gu Yundong could tell that Nanny Qin had become hostile ever since Gu Xian'er returned. She turned around and said to the others, Everyone is here to congratulate my family for building a new house. I like whatever they give me. The villagers, who had been shocked by the gift from the Peng family, immediately laughed. Feng Danning thought, no wonder the village chief said that this girl's words made him feel comfortable. Nanny Qian's smile stiffened slightly. Gu Yundong greeted her with a smile. There are many people today. I'm so busy that my feet don't even touch the ground. Please forgive me if I'm lacking in hospitality. Nanny, please help yourself. Nanny Qian nodded with a smile. Seeing that Gu Yundong had gone to another table, she sat down again and asked Gu Xian'er, Didn't you say that she's your cousin? But she doesn't sound like she came from the countryside at all. Gu Xian'er bit her lips slightly. My uncle studied when he was young, so my cousin learned a few words with him. So that was how it was. No wonder she spoke eloquently, as if she was afraid that others would not know that she could speak a few idioms. The more she lacked something, the more she wanted to show off. At this moment, everyone had already sat down. Shao Qingyuan was sitting not far from Granny Qian's table. Lu Wei was familiar with him, so he naturally sat at the same table as him. Sixth grandfather and the village chief were the most senior and prestigious people in the village. They naturally had to accompany Lu Wei, an esteemed guest from the city, so they sat at this table. The others also wanted to sit, especially Madame Fang and her daughter. There were a few times when they wanted to go to Lu Wei's side to greet him, but when they saw that Shao Qingyuan was around, they did not dare to. Therefore, this table was inexplicably much quieter. Chun Liang and the sixth grandfather were quite friendly to Shao Qingyuan and would occasionally chat with him during the meal. The dishes were served very quickly, and most of them were hard dishes. The villagers no longer cared about the Liu and Peng families. All of them reached out their chopsticks to pick up the meat with glowing faces. Nanny Qian brought 2 maidservants and sat with Madame Fang and her daughter. In fact, she could have left after delivering the gifts. However, after hearing Gu Xian'er's words, she could not help but sit a little longer. When the meat dishes were first served, she wanted to move her chopsticks. However, before she could move, the others at the table had already begun to snatch the dishes crazily. Nanny Qian's chopsticks stopped in midair. She could neither reach forward nor retract them. Gu Xian'er, who was beside her, was enjoying the food. She was a servant in the Peng family. Although she did not have to eat like she did when she was escaping, she still had to snatch food when it was time to eat. She did not have a background or ability, so she could only eat the leftovers. How could Gu Xian'er let go of such a rare hard dish? However, Nanny Qian could not stay any longer. Halfway through the meal, she still wanted to say goodbye to Gu Yundong. Gu Xian'er couldn't bear to leave, but there was nothing she could do. She stuffed 2 pieces of meat into her mouth forcefully before wiping her mouth and standing up. Wait for me outside. They'll go tell the master. She had originally wanted to bring Gu Xian'er along, but after half a day, she could tell that Gu Yundong and her cousin did not have a good relationship. Otherwise, why did she not even say a word to Gu Xian'er? Gu Xian'er and the other servant girl could only wait outside. However, the little girl was in a hurry to go to the toilet and left Gu Xian'er alone at the door. Gu Xian'er secretly sneered. Lazy people have a lot of feces and urine. As she spoke, she clasped her hands. It was really cold. She did not even have 2 pieces of clothing on her, but Gu Yundong could live so well. Just thinking about it made her feel unbalanced. Are you Gu Yundong's cousin? Suddenly, an unfamiliar voice came from behind. When most of the guests had left, she was about to look for the sure couple when she saw Gu Yunshu run over and whisper in her ear mysteriously, "Elder sister, Brother Liu is looking for you." Liu Wei. Gu Yundong's eyes lit up when he thought of Qingyuan. Could it be that there was news of his return? Liu Wei was waiting for her by the well in the backyard. When Gu Yundong went over, he was holding his hair and walking back and forth anxiously. Gu Yundong was surprised. What could make young Master Liu want to tear his head off? Liu Wei suddenly turned around. Hey, you're finally here. I have something very important to tell you." He had been waiting for an entire day, but he endured it and waited for her to finish the banquet before looking for her. "What is it? Tell me." "You kill me this time." Liu Wei suddenly glared at her. "You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.